You got to bring Matt up right away, man. Just double shot us or something here. He is, oh, look at that. Look, I should have texted you. I should have hit you in the Slack ahead of time, Jordan. Shame on me. Matt is getting down right now, and how could you not, as Jordan is bringing us in? It's the official Yahoo version of the Deeper Dive, the full extended Deeper Dive coming your way in 25 minutes and then live before lock. So we have you covered for the next 2.5 hours right now on the stream, getting you ready for this 3-game slate. Matt, you asked for it, man. Last time we talked on Tuesday night, you said, I would rather have the bigger slate. All right, Wednesday, it was jammed to the gills, and now the NBA slate is barely existent tonight with 3 games on it.
Yeah, this was a little bit of an overcorrection for me, but what are you going to do, you know? And yes, I couldn't help myself. I was getting down that beat. It was just, I don't know, that was sensual, just made me want to move.
You know what, though? You're not alone. I see William on the chat. They brought this beat back. This beat wins me money all the time. Original recipe. So maybe this is a good sign here. Jordan speaking to the crowd and to you.
Chef Jordan cooking it up in the kitchen.
All right, man. 3 games. How do you even approach this?
Yeah, this is an interesting slate, right? Anytime you play on a small slate like this, there's going to be some pretty heavy chalk. You got to try and kind of find which spots you want to eat the chalk at, which spots you want to differentiate. Also, limited number of stud options to choose from. The top 2 guys both play center, so you have kind of limited flexibility there. So it is somewhat interesting for a 3-game slate. I do think there are a couple of different ways that you can go. So, yeah, let's roll. Let's dive into some of this stuff.
Absolutely, man. And just before we hit the point guard spot, as we normally do, reminder, of course, hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed, please. All 3 of our channels here. We're not waiting really for anything either. Ja Morant, we know, is out. Both LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to play tonight. There isn't anybody, Will Barton a little bit later, right? But I'm saying as far as anybody at the top, we're not waiting for somebody to come down and, Joel Embiid is a game time decision questionable or Nikola Jokic may not play tonight. We're not dealing with any of that. So I imagine that makes it even easier, especially now where we're a couple of hours out building some lineups.
Yeah, that's, you would hope on a 3-game slate, it's going to be kind of a comfortable lock. The one thing that I'm kind of monitoring is we do have Kyle Anderson as questionable. He's not a huge name, but that's another couple of minutes there for a team that's already a little bit thin without Ja, without Brandon Clark in the front court. So if Kyle Anderson is out too, it does open up some minutes for the rest of the forwards on that team. So that's really the biggest thing I'm watching at the moment. Like you mentioned, Davis and LeBron, they're both probable. You would expect to see them in the lineup. Will Barton, probable. You would expect to see him in the lineup. Other than that, we're pretty much good to go here.
And I love the fact that you're going to be forced now to take some Sixers other than Joel Embiid. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I was going to set the over-under at 3.5, and then I thought, you know what? That might be too high. So let's start at the point. One of those guys coming back from illness. But again, this whole thing on 3-game slate with your build tonight, Matt, is about saving some money, but really allocating it the best possible way, maybe moving away from some chalk. We have DeJounte Murray up there. I don't know if anybody else got bit in the rear Tuesday night with him taking off a rebound at the end of the game, but it killed us on the Odd Shopper parlay. I'm sure a lot of people in the DFS world, but no Ja. We do have Russ. I saw the chat was a little split about how heavy they would get to Russ. And then, of course, you start getting to Tyrese Maxey, Mike Conley, some of these cheaper options on the slate, especially Conley, who I think has a pretty decent matchup, but you have to worry about the minutes. So let's start at the top with Murray and Westbrook, and we'll work our way.
Yeah, at the top, our projections here give a pretty clear edge to DeJounte, and I would have to agree with that. He's just been the better player this season by a pretty wide margin, right? DeJounte 1.33 fantasy points per minute, Westbrook 1.16. And you have to remember that Westbrook's numbers are also slightly inflated because he played an 8-game stretch with LeBron out of the lineup. So Murray is just the better option at this point from a fantasy perspective. He is coming off of a subpar game in his last outing, but he's really given you no reason to doubt him at this point. I'm perfectly fine with going back to Murray at $43. The matchup isn't ideal. The ownership isn't great, right? He's projected for 30% ownership right now, but I would have him as the clear top pay up option.
Is it really just because of everything else right now with Westbrook, where it's a matter of the $3, the projected at least increase in productivity for Murray over Westbrook? Because you're really only dealing with a yes or no prop here, right? It's like, are you getting to Murray? Or are you getting to Westbrook? As opposed to the guys in that middle range. And even Maxey's kind of on his own island with 27. So is your interest in Murray more slate specific tonight? Or does it have something maybe a little bit more big picture?
No, I think he's been a great fantasy target for us all year. I mean, if you look back since the start of the season, he has exceeded his price tag by roughly 6 fantasy points per game. Now the price tag has come up, but the production is still good. Like you'll still take what he's giving you at $43. So he's somebody that has been popping for us quite a bit in the projections at Awesemo, and I see no reason why we would stop liking him moving forward.
Tyus Jones, clearly with Ja Morant out, is getting the ton, is actually leading right now our projected ownership on Yahoo. And look, this is free for you on Awesemo. So while we always encourage you the $29.95 a week for Awesemo Plus, you can take advantage of what's free today, our main slate ownership projections. And Tyus Jones is right there at the top, 41.2%. This isn't really in a 3-game slate, I imagine, Matt, a night to really harp on ownership and how much it's going to hurt you because you only have 6 teams to choose from. Do you find yourself on point or maybe even overweight to that 41.2%?
I think I'm going to be roughly in line, maybe a little bit underweight when all is said and done. Tyus is a good player. He's very capable on a per minute basis. He's at 0.95 fantasy points per minute on the year. He's getting, 34 minutes a night or so with Ja out of the lineup. So like from a median expectation, I would expect him to be one of the better values on the slate. That's how we have it in our projections. That's why he's popping from an ownership standpoint. But I do question if he has, a monster ceiling at a $17 price tag. So I could see myself going in some other directions. But like just in a vacuum, yes, Jones is a strong play. I just think that 41% ownership, and it could even potentially rise before tip off, that does make me a little bit wary.
I can't even have an argument here, make an argument, I should say, for my guy Maxey, simply because of the cost on the slate.
Yeah, he's still way too priced up.
Yeah.
That tends to happen. He got used to playing, that 40-minute a night type role while the 76ers were dealing with all these injuries. The price got inflated and it hasn't come back down to reality yet. So with the team now basically at full strength in a tough matchup against the Jazz, there's just no reason to consider him right now.
Well, anybody else on that bottom end? Maybe it is Shake, or are you going to give us a little Bones Highland love tonight?
Bones is somewhat interesting at $10.
Yeah.
He played 16 and a half minutes in his first game back, but I think that Monty Morris is kind of the most interesting pivot in my opinion. His playing time wasn't really affected with Highland back in. He still saw his 36 minutes in their last game, and he's priced identically to Tyus. So right now we have Monty projected for about 18% ownership. It wouldn't shock me if he checked in below that, just because I think it's so much harder to click his name when Tyus is the exact same price tag. And Morris, not quite as good as Jones on a per minute basis, but he's had some games where he's shown us a bit of ceiling. He had 36 and change just 2 games ago. So I think he's an interesting pivot. He's somebody that I think I'll be overweight on.
All right, let's move to the 2 spot here. And I did see, just to clarify, James had a question about what else we're covering. That's the extended full deeper dive. We're just handling Yahoo. So make sure if you're new to Yahoo that you can take advantage of what we have for you. That link below where you can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Sign up, deposit, play right away. And you know that the ownership projections are free today, but they're not always free. So you can take advantage of all of that. I don't know where you stand on this, but as far as the cost associated with the probability or at least potential of him breaking the slate tonight, I'm a little surprised that Donovan Mitchell is only $34 compared to everybody else on there. This, and I'm bringing this up earlier, this is, I think, one of these games where the Sixers really miss Ben Simmons, the height and speed that they can have on the perimeter. I would be shocked if Mitchell doesn't extend that 30-plus point night, at least tonight against the Sixers, and has a really good matchup.
So my thing with Mitchell, I do think that this price tag is fair, but I'm expecting some regression from him. Like, he has been one of the highest usage players in the league this season. There's no denying that. But the big difference from him is he's just made a lot of shots recently. He's 57% from the field over his last 5 games, 43.8% from 3-point range. He's just not that efficient of a scorer, for his career, right? He shot 43.8% from the field last season. So he has been, way above what you would expect from him over this most recent stretch. So I think he's a regression candidate. Can he get there through sheer volume against the 76ers? Yes, right. If he puts up another, 25 shot attempts, he doesn't necessarily need to shoot 50% to return value. But I do think that he's somebody that regression is coming for.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure how you saw the game flow too, because I think Utah wins. I just don't think they blow them out. So if it's a tighter game, then to your point, Mitchell may just be out of circumstance, have that continued volume of shooting. But you're right, where there's always going to be that regression. And that could mean 24 points as opposed to 36 points, where it would really pay off. All right, so where do we look at a cheaper cost? Desmond Bane is coming up, especially with Ja's absence. He's coming up huge, 30% of the slate rostering Desmond Bane on Yahoo. We also have Derek White, a little bit more expensive and coming in pretty much at the same there as far as any pivots from the top at Mitchell.
Yeah, for me, Derek White, clearly the superior option to Desmond Bane. And, they're projected for identical ownership. I'm going to have way more White than Bane tonight. For starters, I think White is just kind of a better basketball player. Desmond Bane has done some good things this year, but White, he's up to 0.98 fantasy points per minute over the past month. That's slightly better than Bane. But then you also have to factor in the no Keldon Johnson thing. I think White has a higher ceiling, right? We've seen in his last 6 games, he's gone for at least 38.7 in 4 of them. I really like White. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. I think he's an excellent value. This is chalk that I'm willing to eat tonight.
And same thing with White, you said? Bane and White, both chalk?
No, Bane, I'm much less bullish on.
Okay, so White is the chalk you're willing to eat. Bane, a little bit lesser. Okay, no, that makes sense, especially as you laid out there. So we cover Mitchell at the top. Is there anybody else on a cheaper standpoint? I mean, you may have a lot of ownership behind Melton, so I don't know how much of a mind option that can be unless you're fine. And again, ownership 20% on a 3-game slate isn't going to kill you by any means. So it's not a deterrent by any means, but $16 for a guy in Seth who lit it up last night, Matt?
I'd rather have Seth at $16 than Melton at $16. It's just one of those things where Melton is probably the better fantasy player on a per minute basis, but Seth, you just feel a lot more comfortable with the volume of minutes that he's going to get. Seth should be well into the 30s. Melton is a guy who is going to play in the low 20s. So if Curry has a night where his shot is falling, he has displayed the upside that we're looking for at this price tag. I mean, just look at his last game, right? Yep. 8 for 14 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3. The 8 assists. That's the one thing about Curry that has kind of gone a little bit under the radar recently, at least 5 assists in 3 of his last 4 games. So he's operating a bit more as a distributor. I think Curry's a fine option tonight. So there's 176er for your
I already had it in my brain. Now, to be fair, it's taken a 3-game barren slate in order for you to get to Seth. So I do recognize the circumstances around that. All right, let's move to the 3. Anybody else on the bottom end you want to mention before we move to LeBron?
Not on the bottom end, but Will Barton.
Okay,
He's checking in right now with sort of the lowest ownership amongst that top group of shooting guards. And I'm not 100% sure why, right? Barton is the number 2 option for the Nuggets right now. Offensively, he's coming off a pretty big performance last night. You know, I guess maybe the probable designation would be scaring some people off, but I don't see why his ownership should be that much lower than a guy like Desmond Bane.
All right, so the 3 spot here is LeBron at $43, and then everybody else significantly less. In fact, there are only 2 other guys that are in the 20s before you get to Bogdanovich and THT in the teens. LeBron's at 43. We've got Brooks. And again, we talk about Memphis without Ja and how much the productivity slides to other people. Aaron Gordon is at $21 for Denver. But let's start with LeBron at that 43 tag.
Yeah, LeBron is somebody I will have exposure to. Probably over the field would be my guess based on this 25% ownership projection we have for him. I think that most of the attention in the stud tier today is going to be placed on the centers. So that means a guy like LeBron, we know he has upside, right? He can give us 60 plus. He's already done that many times this year. And it's going to give us a little bit of a different lineup construction, right? If the other people are paying up for stud centers and we're paying up for a stud small forward and maybe going with a little bit cheaper center, it's just one way to get a different build in tournaments. And I think that out of the 3 games on the slate tonight, right, this one between the Lakers and the Grizzlies stands out as the clear best game to target. The total is up to 223.5, I believe. Both of the other games are at 216 or less. These 2 teams own the 2 highest implied team totals on the slate. Only a 4-point spread. Lakers have played at the 3rd fastest pace. Like, this is a game that I think if you want to consider a game stack, this would be the one to do it.
And starts with LeBron, clearly.
Yes.
LeBron and AD, who we'll get to coming up.
Yep. And I do think right now we have Dillon Brooks projected for the most ownership at this position, nearly 35%. You know, I have kind of been on Dillon Brooks quite a bit. He's one of my guys. He gets out there and he has no conscience. He's not afraid to shoot, but the usage has trended down, which is a bit surprising. 22.1%, 28.5%, 23.5% over his last 3 games. So I do think that there's merit to fading a chalk Dillon Brooks. Going with a LeBron or going with a, punt play at the position, I think is a strategy that I'm leaning towards at the moment.
Doesn't make sense then, right? To get to much Aaron Gordon at 21 because there's not really a break.
Yeah, I don't see Gordon as really a viable option. If you look at his last 2 games, he's played huge minutes, 43 and change, 38 and change, and he hasn't even cracked 24 fantasy points. I get it, right? All those minutes, he could potentially have a game where he puts together a better performance, but we just really haven't seen it very often this season. So if he beats me, so be it. I'm just not really ever looking to play Aaron Gordon.
Is there any punt there? And I don't bring up the punt just because 2 Sixers happen to be punt options with Green and Thibault. I mean, look, it's a back-to-back for Danny Green. You got 26 minutes last night. I wouldn't be shocked if this guy played 3 minutes tonight. And I say that with hyperbole, of course. But when you start to look at that bottom end here, if anybody jumps out that you could work with in that 10, maybe even in that lower cost, cap it at THT, but if you want to throw Rudy Gay in there for $11, you're at least getting somewhat of a floor return on there as well.
Yeah, Rudy Gay is somebody that I really love from a fantasy perspective because when he's on the floor, he's going to produce. He's just not really playing enough minutes at the moment. I would rather go with Danny Green, who I know you mentioned the back-to-back concerns. That's definitely something to think about, but 26 and a half, 30, and 34 minutes roughly in his past 3 games. He's starting to come on here a bit for the 76ers, but I do think my favorite of the punt plays are the Spurs guys. You've got Doug McDermott at $10. He's played 25 minutes each of the last 3 games. He could see a few additional minutes with Keldon out of the lineup, but Vassell to me might be even more intriguing. He was like doubtful earlier in the day. Now he's upgraded to probable. I think a lot of people are just going to not even consider clicking on his name. So we have him projected for 12.5% ownership. I bet he comes in below that. Wow. And, finding a guy like that at low ownership on a 3-game slate, I think is something to consider. And he's pretty good, right? 0.92 fantasy points per minute so far this season. So I think he's sneaky today. I like Vassell as a sneaky play.
All right, let's move to the 4. We've got the 4, the 5 to get out of here. Hit that thumbs up button. More people coming in, awaiting the extended deeper dive here across the board. Josh and Adam have you coming up. And then it's Eric and Greg tonight on Live Before Lock at 6. So next 2 hours and change, we have you right here. Don't go anywhere. You're going to be fully prepared. Adam's deeper dive is up on the site each and every day. That's free. So you don't have to worry about paying for that. You should be taking advantage of everything that Adam is putting out, both on shows here and, of course, his deeper dive. Yeah. I apologize. Thank you. So that's my fault. And I always get told things at the end here, Matt. So in some cases, I don't get told unless I'm making a mistake live on a show, as Jordan here saves my ass. It's the NBA injury report. I apologize, Josh and Adam. That has replaced the deeper dive. So make sure you. Oh, Greg, why don't you just get on and tell everybody what the hell this is? Because I clearly have no idea what's going on. Now I got to get all these dislikes here. Get Shander out of here. God, where's Lofty? Shit. Seriously. Greg's asking how many likes it's going to take for you to play the sax.
2 men, not enough. There's not enough likes in the world.
No? Okay.
I sold the saxophone. The people who came over from DraftKings should know that already, though.
Okay, fair enough. Anthony Davis, $46. You mentioned the stack here for the Lakers. I imagine you're getting a lot to him, and then I can't in good conscience have you race to get to Tobias Harris. Not tonight.
I mean, Harris is somewhat interesting from a game theory perspective, right? You look at Anthony Davis is $46. We have him projected for 33% ownership. Jaren Jackson Jr. is $28. We have him projected for 35% ownership. And Tobias is sort of, priced closer to Jackson. He's $30, but he's going to be by far the least owned option of that trio. So anytime you're talking, a guy, he's got some ceiling, right? Tobias has shown the ability to score the ball. Anytime you can get that guy at reduced ownership, it's worth considering in tournaments, but I'm not officially adding him to the Sixers list.
No, that's
right,
totally
we're
okay.
Still at 1.
We'll be at 2 before we get out of here, I assume. All right, let's look at Jaren Jackson as the chalk pivot to Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I don't even think he's the chalk pivot. I think he's just kind of the chalk. People love this guy, myself included. If he doesn't go into foul trouble, he's capable of putting up some huge fantasy totals. The Lakers have actually been a decent matchup for big men so far this season. I think Jaren Jackson's a strong play. I mean, would I rather have Anthony Davis at 46 or Jaren Jackson at 28? I think the answer is Jaren Jackson.
Okay. Makes sense. Anybody below Jackson? Now Anthony Davis we've covered. Tobias Harris is Royce O'Neal becomes popular.
Yeah, Royce is a good play. He's been a tremendous value recently. Over his last 10 games on Yahoo's, he's exceeded his fantasy-based or his salary-based scoring expectations by 8 points. So he's been really good. I don't know if I feel great about playing a chalk Royce O'Neal, but certainly like from a pure points per dollar perspective, he's a good option. I think I would rather go with Jeff Green, though, in this price range. Slightly less ownership, and I think slightly more upside.
All right. Anybody below that you want to hit and save some time here for the centers before we get out?
And this is really kind of a top heavy position.
Yeah.
The only guy I would throw in is if Kyle Anderson plays, you can consider him at the absolute minimum.
Are we getting to 2 Sixers? You purposely held this to the end here, torturing me. Are you going to bump Embiid up over Jokic? There's a $5 difference in cost. Embiid's back, baby.
Embiid is back, but Jokic is just so damn good. He never left. If you just look at those two guys, right, over the past month, it's been close fantasy scoring. 1.65 fantasy points per minute for Jokic, 1.6 for Embiid. But over the course of the season, it's 1.7 for Jokic, 1.47 for Embiid. So I do think it's fair that Jokic is priced more expensively. He's got the better matchup. You know, Embiid has to deal with the size of Rudy Gobert. Jokic does not. So I would give Jokic a slight edge here between the two. But I do think Embiid is somebody that I will have plenty of exposure to, right? He's only projected to catch 25% ownership at the moment. And we've seen the ceiling. We've seen the ceiling from him, right? He's back to being sort of a usage monster, scoring tons of points. All good things for fantasy. So yes, I will have plenty of Joel Embiid, but I will also have plenty of Nikola Jokic.
All right. So real quick on the way out, 2 things from you. How much are you getting to Rudy Gobert, especially with this matchup? And anybody in that, because there isn't any mid-range outside of Steven Adams, anybody, really, there are 2 guys that you can be, I guess, considered mid-range. Anybody on that bottom end that you're racing to get, although this is such a top-heavy slate here with the center position.
Yeah, I think no Gobert for me at 36.
Yep.
Too many bad scenarios against Embiid. Yes, Jakob Poeltl at 23. Yes, Steven Adams at 18. No anybody lower than that.
Awesome. We got it. We got it in there. And we corrected the NBA injury report. At least I did. It wasn't your fault. Now you're guilty by association. All right, everybody. We appreciate you hanging with us. Don't go anywhere, as Josh and Adam are coming up next. We'll try and get this thing to 100 before 100 likes. Hit that thumbs up, please, if you haven't already, because Josh is going to eviscerate us as soon as he comes in. I know that's the first thing he's going to do, but he's got heavy lifting with this next hour. Adam alongside to break down this 3-game slate, and then live before lock coming your way at 6 o'clock. So don't go anywhere. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe. Thank Jordan in the chat. He's not going anywhere either. Matt's on Twitter at Matt LaMarca at Shander Show for me. Matt, see you Tuesday, brother.
Later.
Or Monday.
Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive, which is really hard for me to say when I only do this show once a week. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy Sports, and we're here to break down a 3-game NBA slate. We're going to have plenty of time to get through every single possible conceivable outcome for tonight. You're going to get it all over the next hour. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, because the likes are low. Adam, we did not talk this morning. We don't do the strategy show together on Thursday. So how are you?
I'm good. I am exhausted. It's been a long day, but excited to talk basketball.
Yeah, you and me both. Interesting slate. We've got a couple news pieces that we still have to wait on for the day, but it's the craziest part for me is that I think each team has like a legitimately good starting center option, and that really creates an interesting center pool that we're going to hash out as we work our way through all of this. I want to let everybody know, schedule for the rest of the day. NBA Live Before Lock comes up immediately after this. You don't have to switch streams. You just stay right here, 6 p.m. Live Before Lock takes you all the way up to 7 o'clock. We also have NFL Live Before Lock coming up at 7:15 tonight. That is for, God, I already forgot, Steelers Vikings. I knew I could pull it out of somewhere. So we also have Live Before Lock for that. So make sure you're checking out that show. Free content for today. NBA ownership projections. That's a big one. NFL single game rankings, NHL ownership projections. So a lot of goods, still more content to come out for today. So be ready for it, everybody. Adam, you ready to get this one started?
Yes.
Kicking it off with the Utah Jazz in Philadelphia. Jazz are 3-point favorites, 216 total. I started this day off this morning thinking, I wonder if Mike Conley might sit here or we might get some sort of like interesting Utah Jazz news. Certainly didn't. This is the Utah Jazz that are the normal Utah Jazz. Here are the ownership projections for the top 8 guys for the Jazz in no particular order for right now. 19, 20, 23, 17, 18, 16, 14, 15. What do we do with the Jazz?
Yeah, it's just your normal combination of stuff really with Utah. They look solid, but nothing really stands out. Is Whiteside still questionable?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
Let me double check it.
I haven't
that's
seen
what I thought too.
That's
unconfirmed that.
What'd you say?
I haven't seen anything to the alternative for that. So I still see questionable.
Okay. Yeah. I was just double checking. It was taking me a minute to get everything pulled back up because of losing all of my bookmarks. But yeah, so he's the one piece that he is kind of interesting because if he sits, I think you're likely to see more minutes from Rudy Gobert. He played a lot a couple of games ago. He played 18 first half minutes last game before getting in foul trouble in the third quarter. So you would potentially see more playing time for him at 8,400. That's pretty valuable. And then also potentially more playing time for Rudy Gay, getting backup center and backup wing minutes as opposed to just backup wing minutes. So that does actually have an impact, especially on a slate of this size. But other than that, it's pretty much just the same old here. Like Mitchell is good. He's priced where he should be. Same for Conley. Clarkson certainly gives you a ceiling. He also has a pretty low floor. Ingles is really cheap. I could see him getting some ownership here just because of a lack of alternatives. He also sucks from a DFS standpoint. He's likely to play 24, 25 minutes. So it's definitely a spot where I want to be aware of the ownership. But yeah, there's not a whole lot that stands out here, especially if Whiteside is in.
Yeah, I don't even have like hypothetical questions to ask you for this team. Like there's no delineation of like what happens if this guy can get like they just don't have that kind of stuff. This is as cut and dry of a rotation as we have in the NBA. So I do have one question for you that I think a lot of people will be interested in. That would be, do you set any particular groups for Utah?
Yeah. I mean, I'll relax it a little bit on smaller slates, so I'm not too concerned about it here. But I mean, ideally, so you definitely don't want Gobert and Whiteside, at least on a bigger slate. I mean, tonight it's certainly possible that Whiteside is one of the better $3,300 plays if he plays, and that Gobert is still good. So you could, if you wanted, you could relax that one. But on normal size slates, normally I don't want more of like one of Clarkson and Ingles because I think it's pretty unlikely they both end up in the closing lineup. I don't want more than one of O'Neal and Gay, but on a slate of this size, I'm a lot less strict in general with rules.
Oh man, there is nothing worse than forgetting that you're in like a queue for something.
Yeah.
DraftKings has the Tom Brady mystery containers for today. So yeah. I had that open and all of a sudden like chimes and everything are going off in my ears. And I didn't remember, but just in case you're in that as well. Same
No, I
thing for
forgot
like
to get
when you get in the Top Shot queue and they move you on, and you hear like jingles and jangles in your ears.
It's not
Wasn't
just
ready
you
for that.
can't just go in and buy those today. I didn't know there was a queue.
There is a queue, and they are about to be gone. I'm doing the location check right now. All right, I got one. Nice. There's only 211 left, so
Yeah, I just saw it, and then I clicked the traffic lights, so I'll probably
cool.
feel that.
That's fun. I did get the Simone Biles one, which was interesting. Ultimately, I don't believe it has any value, but maybe we'll take a little bit of a
I got the
better look at.
Gretzky one. Or I got three of the
nice.
Gretzky's.
Okay. Nice. Did you open them?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Anyway. I wish that I had more to like try to talk through for the Jazz. This is like the one team in the NBA where there isn't anything more. I mean, I guess I could hit you with one thing, although I don't know if you're going to be able to add any real context to it. Donovan Mitchell is 38% owned on FanDuel. He's 8,400, point guard, shooting guard eligible. The rest of the ownership on FanDuel is sort of mirroring how it is on DraftKings, where like everybody is basically the same. Do you have any, like, do you look into that at all, or have you looked into that at all? Does the Mitchell ownership seem aggressive to you? It doesn't really to me. It makes a lot of sense at 8,400. So I see him as the outlier, but I was wondering if you saw it differently.
I mean, I think 8,400 looks very good for Mitchell. I hadn't looked at FanDuel ownership, but what did you say it was?
38.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of high, but I think it makes a lot of sense too. Like he's $1,400 less than the DeJounte Murray.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it. Like when I ran my crunches, I got to 31% of him. So like I'm in that same ballpark. Yeah. That's where he was in my sims. Just of all the pieces that exist for Utah, like that's the only thing that stands out with any sort of differentiation to the rest of the team. But that's sort of everything that I've got for Utah right now. Philly, we could actually talk about a little bit. Sixers are 3-point dogs at home, which I'm sure they're not stoked about. We've got Joel Embiid on FanDuel at 10-6. He's 11K on DraftKings. I think he looks solid. Tobias Harris is a guy that I'm getting to quite a bit on FanDuel. Small forward, power forward eligible, 7,700. I think that extra designation really helps on a day like today. Maxey is pulling a little bit of love on FanDuel. He's about 20% owned, only 6.5 on DraftKings. Similarly, Seth Curry is about 20% owned on FanDuel, only about 10 on DraftKings. The actual value piece that's coming in on DK is Danny Green, only 3,300 for some strange reason, 21% owned, looking like a really nice value. But what stands out most to you for Philly?
So from the top end, it's Embiid and Harris. I think both guys they look good here. One thing I mentioned on the strategy show with Greg is this is clearly not an appealing matchup against Utah, but it's also important not to double count it and not to like look at this and say, oh, I don't want to play the Sixers against Utah, because when you look at the implied totals for the teams on this slate, with the exception of the Lakers, who are at 114, every team is between 107 and 110. So it's not like the Sixers are likely to do much worse than the alternatives on this slate. So that is one thing to keep in mind, just because I know for me, like, obviously when I'm making lineups and everything, I'm just using the data, but I know still when I look at the Sixers, I'm just like, I don't really want these guys. They're playing Utah, but I think that is something to keep in mind, that, none of the teams really look great here as a whole. I think Embiid looks pretty good at 11K. He's been playing a bit better lately. Tobias Harris is still reasonably priced at 7,600. He should play 34 minutes. He's a little over a fantasy point per minute guy. The rest of these guys, Maxey, Curry, nothing really stands out. Danny Green at 3,300, you mentioned, it's just a really cheap price tag. He's not a very good fantasy producer. He's around 0.7 DraftKings points per minute. He is getting ownership at 23%. In general, those are the types of plays I absolutely hate making, when you get a quarter of the field rostering someone who's very likely to score like 19 fantasy points. But at the same time, it's a 3-game slate. There's only so many different ways you can go. There are guys that I want to pay up for on this slate. So maybe it just becomes a little bit of a necessary evil. Okay.
How are you feeling about the rest of the Philly guys here? Do you see yourself, trying to take any shots on a Matisse Thybulle, a Shake Milton, who's been playing a little bit more as of late? Is this a day where you try to get to a little bit of someone like Andre Drummond, just to be different on a 3-game slate?
I think Matisse Thybulle's kind of interesting, just because you have the ownership going to Danny Green. And I think that Danny Green is the better play in the sense of, he's likely to play 26, 27 minutes. He's 3,300, but and Matisse Thybulle is not a great fantasy option either. But he is getting 1/4 the ownership of Danny Green. I think that it is kind of appealing just to go there, especially because there are certain instances where, maybe Thybulle plays more because he's playing well, or maybe they want him on Donovan Mitchell and Danny Green's getting cooked, which is entirely possible. So, I do think there's some negative leverage there in addition to the fact that, negative leverage against Danny Green, not negative leverage on Matisse Thybulle, but negatively correlates with Danny Green to some extent. And then also just is getting less ownership.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. If you think that Danny Green loses 2 or 3 minutes to Thybulle and you have those guys projected the same, I mean, the ownership is the difference there. They're basically the same guy from a per minute perspective. They're both putrid. Like, it's two of the exact same kinds of bad. They get there in different ways, sure. But I like that shout, especially at that price tag on DraftKings, where Matisse Thybulle is 4,700 on FanDuel. Danny Green is 4,800. Neither one of those guys look particularly good on FanDuel in general. Same for basically the rest of Philly's bench. All these guys are just overpriced and hard to get to. So I don't have too much interest there. I guess I'm going to hit you with this question for every single game, just because I know people would kind of have these questions. Do you set any groups for Philadelphia?
Obviously, Embiid and Drummond. That's one where there's no way I'm playing them together, even on a 3-game slate. You can do it with Gobert and Whiteside because of the $3,300 tag on Whiteside. I still don't love it, but it's reasonable. I don't know how Drummond pays off 5,200 while Embiid also pays off 11K. That seems extremely unlikely.
That's a lot of overtimes.
Right. Yeah. So I would definitely set that one. I think that I don't want more than one of Green, Thybulle, Niang, Korkmaz. Like, those guys aren't closing together. If one of them gets hot, they can steal minutes from the others, but it's pretty unlikely that two of them are getting into the closing lineup. Max 2 of Maxey, Curry, Milton.
Max 2 of Maxey, Curry. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, those guys are probably not going to be in there as a group of 3. I would not expect that here, at least. So that makes some sense. Anything else you think we should be looking at or touching on here for Philly? We're seeing the highest owned guy right now is Tobias Harris on FanDuel at 25%. He is actually a guy that I'm getting a little bit more of than that mark. I'm nervous about it, but I don't mind it all that much.
We do also have Danny Green right now in the Boom Bust tool as the most over-owned player on DraftKings.
Interesting.
14.3% chance of being in the optimal lineup, 22.9% ownership, also only a 9.9% boom percentage, which that's really notable because a lot of times if you look at just the most negatively leveraged player in terms of optimal percentage versus ownership, a lot of times they'll still have a really high boom percentage. You don't even have that with Danny Green.
That's a good point. Anything else here?
No.
All righty.
I'm positive now that Danny Green's going to score like 38 DraftKings points. That's normally how it goes.
Let's hope not, because I am not going to have him. And if he does, I can turn this one off pretty early. Sponsor for this show, Yahoo Fantasy Sports. And you can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you listen to everything that I'm about to say. You have to be new to Yahoo. Let's start there. Sign up for an account using the link in the description of this video, make a deposit, and then play. That is it. Yahoo will then send us your name after you play in your first paid contest. We will then reach out to you via email with your coupon code. If you need immediate access, please email support@awesemo.com. They will get you set up. You can also claim a free $10 of site credit by clicking that link in the description of the video. It can be used to enter any Yahoo contest, including tonight's $175,000 Thursday night football baller. That is a really difficult thing to say when you're trying to read it off. Make sure to use our DFS tools and projections. We have them designed specifically for Yahoo. I'm going to go take a look at that contest for right now. Looking good. Looking good. What do we have for Sunday? Are those contests up yet? I'm assuming they are, right?
They should be. I haven't looked. Really? They should be.
I know I should be pushing for the Thursday night contest, but I don't want you guys to forget the $1 million baller on Sunday. $200,000 of guaranteed overlay. It is the best contest in the industry. It's got a fantastic payout structure. First place, $100K. Second, $50. Third, $25. It's not 50, 30, 10 like some other contests you may see. This is a really great tournament, clear across the board. If you're getting into anything, this is the one that you should be getting into. So make sure you're signing up at Yahoo, and you get a free month of Awesemo Plus if you want to do it. Alrighty, on to the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Memphis Grizzlies, 3.5-point favorites. That is LA in Memphis. We'll start with the trio: Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook. Who do you like? Who do you not like? Would you do all three? I don't really know where to start here, but let's just talk the big three for the Lakers.
So I actually think they are pretty interesting tonight because of the slate size. What stood out to me this morning was that, there are a lot of guys to pay out for tonight, and we haven't talked about Jokic yet. I obviously think he's great. I think Embiid's great, but what really stood out to me was that you weren't getting quite as much ownership going to the Lakers guys as you were some of these other pay up options, and they're a little bit cheaper. So you have LeBron at 9,900 on 10-1 on DraftKings, Westbrook at 9,900, Davis at 10K. Davis is the one that I typically get to first. He's been the best of the three in terms of fantasy production when all three play. LeBron is second, Westbrook is third, but you also have 14% ownership going to Russell Westbrook on a 3-game slate. I realize that he's not been great in the games where everybody plays, and I don't expect him to be. He's clearly the one that kind of doesn't contribute a whole lot of anything that the Lakers need. And clearly, they're not going to make LeBron stop handling the ball or anything. So on average, you're not going to get the best games from Westbrook, but this is still someone that's capable of just triple doubling basically at will. And he's 9,900 and getting 14% ownership when there's 6 teams playing. So I am interested in him, and I'm interested in all three of these guys, mostly just because of ownership.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit of AD right now. He, as per usual, grading out as my best option. And that's from a FanDuel perspective. Being able to roster him at power forward and center allows me to have lineups with Anthony Davis and Nikola Jokic. And that is really appealing to me because I think they are the two best pay up options on this slate today. So people will ask, can you get to all three? Would you want to?
No, I don't think you even can.
Okay.
You're talking in one lineup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you even really can.
Okay. Just checking. Because I know people will ask. I wouldn't want to. Do you set a rule, or would you just not even care because it won't come up?
It won't come up. I think if I set any rule there, it would be if more than one, then run it back with someone from the Grizzlies.
Which I don't get the sense you're going to have a problem finding a guy from the Grizzlies.
That's one reason I don't mind the rule.
Yeah. It also probably a rule that doesn't need to be set. You're probably getting a Grizzly in every lineup anyway. So, alrighty. Let's talk about the rest of this team then. Talen Horton-Tucker is projected for 32% ownership on FanDuel, 13 on DraftKings. I guess I should actually check and see if we have an ownership update. 21 minutes ago. Let me go ahead and grab that ownership update. Not that I think that anything changed all that dramatically since the last one, but it certainly moved a little bit. No sense in talking about the wrong shit for the rest of the show. So 33% on Talen Horton-Tucker, 14% on DraftKings. How are you feeling about THT here?
I kind of like the price on DraftKings. He's only started 3 games with all 3 of Westbrook, Davis, and LeBron. He's only averaged 0.68 DraftKings points per minute in those games. So the production has taken a hit. You would expect that to be the case, but he's also averaged about 30 minutes per game. He can see 32 plus if he's playing well. So given that the ownership's relatively low and he has guard forward eligibility, I actually think he's a pretty decent option.
I'm a little nervous about the 33% ownership on FanDuel. I'd be a little bit more intrigued by the 14 on DraftKings, but at the same time, I don't think it's crazy. I got him at 0.86 FanDuel points per minute here. That seems, he's a really hard guy to set rates for.
Yeah, because he's been in so many different situations this year.
Yeah, it's like, there's no way that I could project him as the 0.7 guy or whatever that he's had that in his starts. That seems like aggressively incorrect, but I don't know how much higher to go. So that one is a bit of a struggle. What do we do here with the rest of this Lakers team? That's where I think it gets a little bit interesting. We saw Avery Bradley return after being out for 2 games, played 24.5 minutes. I don't think that Wayne Ellington is viable any longer. We saw Anthony Davis start. Are you expecting the same starting lineup?
I am, just because Bradley had been injured and then I think he was available, but he just didn't play. The fact that he just went back to the starting lineup, and he was in it previously, it doesn't seem likely that they're going to take him back out and put Howard back in. They certainly could, but I'm assuming Bradley starts for now.
Do you have any interest in Dwight Howard today?
Not if he doesn't start, I don't think.
Okay. What do we do with...
He played 12 minutes last game, and that's including garbage time.
Okay. What do we do with Melo, Bradley, and Monk?
I think Monk is sort of interesting at 5% ownership on DraftKings. He's somebody Greg and I talked about a bit this morning. He only played like 20 minutes last game. And that was coming after a game where he played, I believe it was 29 minutes. And I don't really view him any differently after the last game because I didn't view him any differently after the previous game. But the point being is that when he's playing well, he can get more minutes. 2 games ago, when he played all those minutes, he just was not missing in the second half. He played the final like 19 minutes of the game. He had 14 actual points in the fourth quarter and just didn't come off the floor. So I think on average, you're going to get 20 to 22 minutes and he's going to suck at 4,700. But if he's playing well, he can take minutes from somebody like Horton Tucker. He can take minutes from Avery Bradley and potentially be in the closing lineup. You're really in large field tournaments, you're thinking a lot more, especially on a 3-game slate, where it's really difficult to find low owned players that have any semblance of upside. You're thinking more about, what does it look like when Malik Monk plays well? So it's not a case where I want my entire night riding on Malik Monk or anything like that. But I do think that there's a little bit bigger gap between like his ceiling and his median projection than there are going to be for most people because there's minutes volatility in addition to playing time or in addition to performance.
He's got one of the bigger ranges of minutes on this slate for today. Can you get to $3,300 Avery Bradley, who scores a half fantasy point per minute? He might be the worst fantasy player in the league.
He's definitely up there. Here's the one lone argument for Avery Bradley. He is the same price as Danny Green, and he is getting 1/10 the ownership. That is it. Danny Green's for sure the better play in terms of probably like chances of success and everything, but it's possible.
I have Avery Bradley second from the bottom in my like rolling talent metric. Do you have a guess who the worst player in fantasy is? This is by I don't know why you got to talk about Laffy like that. This is by 1/100th of a FanDuel point, by the way.
Is it Snell?
It is Tony Snell.
Yeah. Good
work. The bottom 4 are Solomon Hill, Semi Ojeleye, Avery Bradley, Tony Snell. Yeah. Yikes. Not good. Yeah. We got Tony Snell guesses in chat too. So kudos.
So yeah, the short answer there is basically, I think, don't play Avery Bradley, but it's a 3-game slate. And like he probably beats Danny Green more than 10% of the time or whatever. Yeah. But you also probably can just find better things to do to be different than anything involving Avery Bradley.
That's probably a real true statement. Do we have anything else here?
I don't think so. I think that was
Mellow thoughts. Anything specific, or is he just like a guy?
He's just a guy. The playing time has been pretty disappointing lately, so that's something to keep in mind. We'd seen a stretch where he was, pretty consistently getting 28 to 30 minutes, but he's been in like the low to mid 20s more often than not lately.
Okay, that works for me. We are moving through this a little bit faster than I was hoping for. So we're going to slow down right now with the Memphis Grizzlies because this is where the ownership lies. We got a lot to talk about. A lot of these guys look good. Some of them look like the best play on the slate. Dylan Brooks is 40 to 50% owned, depending on which site you're playing on today. Tyus Jones is 30 to 40% owned, depending on which site you're playing on today. Jaren Jackson is 35% owned on DraftKings, 60 on FanDuel, and I think that's low. You can get 20 to 30% of DeAnthony Melton on a day like today. We've got 22% owned Steven Adams, who might be the most interesting talking point here. Desmond Bane looking good. Those are the 6 guys that are pulling sizable ownership on either FanDuel, DraftKings, or both. Where would you like to start?
I think we can start with Jaren Jackson. I mean, He's been fantastic without John Morant this year. His usage rate is almost 30%. He's playing more minutes recently, which is really appealing to me because we know that there's volatility with him as far as fouls go. And that always makes him risky and it makes it scary to roster him when he's popular because a lot of times he's just going to get in foul trouble, especially against a team that features Anthony Davis and LeBron and Russell Westbrook, attacking the basket. You could get a lot of quick fouls on Jackson. But what I think is really appealing, in addition to the increased per minute production, is early in the season, even when he wasn't in foul trouble, he just was like landing around 30 minutes in those games. And so it was kind of just like, okay, why am I taking on the risk of rostering a popular Jaren Jackson when the best outcome I'm really hoping for is that he gets to play 30 minutes. Now he's playing 33, 34 minutes when he's not in foul trouble. So the ceiling is just much higher than it was earlier in the year because he's getting 3 or 4 minutes more in his non-foul trouble games and he's producing at a higher rate with Morant out. So it just makes it really difficult not to get there, even at the high ownership. You mentioned it's insane on FanDuel, but he's just essentially free. He would need, if you assume, let's say that if the game goes perfectly for him, he's playing 34 minutes, right?
I gave him 30.
What'd you say?
I'm giving him 30.
That's what I'm giving him 30.
Yeah.
And even then he's going to look really good. But you could realistically shave 8 minutes off of that best case, and he still probably is fine for his salary.
Yeah, he could play 24 minutes and still score 40 fantasy points,
right.
And that is perfectly usable on a day like today.
You basically just need to avoid Jaren Jackson just picked up 2 fouls in the first minute of the game. Taylor Jenkins left him in, and he picked up number 3 a minute and a half, and sat the rest of the half. You need to avoid that. That's pretty much
we can be very confident now. Jeremy Savage doesn't like him much, doesn't care how many minutes he plays. With a take like that, I've never been more confident in where I'm at. I've got 91% Jaren Jackson on the crunch that I ran previously. Feel great about it. I
don't have chat open, but I don't even understand how that's a take. It's not like we're talking about.
You're clearly never looking at the stats with him with not playing with Ja Morant. You're just clearly burying your head in the sand to have a take like that.
Right. He's played 331 minutes without Morant. He has he's averaging 1.29 DraftKings points per minute. So, you might want to care if he plays 32 minutes. You might want to care.
You're not going to have any money because you're not going to win.
Right.
Not to mention, this is a matchup against the Lakers, an also fast team. This is a track meet matchup. I'm terrified that he picks up 3 fouls in the first 4 minutes of this game, but I also have no other choice. He's very clearly the best play on the slate.
He's one of those guys where if he does get those 2 quick fouls, you're actually rooting for the coach to take him out, just to preserve the chance that he can at least play a little bit.
I want him to still get that second rotation. Sure. Okay, so let's put Jaren Jackson to bed for now. Best play for today or something in that neighborhood?
Definitely up there.
Yeah. FanDuel, I think it's him and it's not close, but we're going to talk about the rest of these guys now. I want to get your thoughts on Steven Adams first. 5,100. He is just center eligible, obviously, on DraftKings. Only 22% ownership. We know the opportunity cost is high, but Steven Adams has been playing a lot more minutes as of late.
Yeah, and I think he's benefiting, at least to some extent, from the injuries in the front court. No Brandon Clark. Before Clark started missing games, he had been being used as Adams' backup. And so, you got 30 minutes last game, 31 the game before that, 27 against Dallas. And it's not even like he was playing he played 21 minutes against OKC. That was the 70-point win. But he played 26 the game before that. So in his last 4 remotely competitive games, he's played 26, 27, 31, and 30 minutes. He's only 5,100. It's not even like he was playing true big teams. Miami was playing Dedmon at that point, who, he's a center, but it's not like he's just banging down low. He's hanging out around the 3-point line a decent amount. It's not somebody that you would have to have Adams out there. Dallas is, playing a lot of Porzingis. It's not like they have a real center. So he's getting those minutes. And I think a lot of it just has to do with his backup being out. So I am interested in going to him here.
Okay. Same. I think the ownership on him is a little low for right now, and I have a bit of intrigue. By the way, just wanted to mention it. Lakers 18th in free throw rate this season, so nothing too crazy. You would expect that to be higher given who they are. They are not.
Do you have Jackson's foul rate in front of you? Because anecdotally, it seems like he's been better.
It is better. It's not great, but it is better. Though last I looked, almost there. Jackson. So last season, he was 6th percentile, 6.4% foul rate. And now it's 4.5%, which is a 32nd percentile rate for big men. That is passable enough.
Yeah. And
for someone that has a elite level block rate and has been an elite to borderline elite steal guy for his career as well. So
yeah, 4.4 blocks per 100 possessions this year, 1.2 steals.
Yeah, I'm loving it. All right, let's talk about the rest of these guys.
Last year was to the point where it was just dude, are you going on the floor and intentionally just fouling people? How are you doing this? It hasn't been to that level this year.
One of the worst last year when he was out there. I think Dylan Brooks looks fantastic. I'm very happy to get to Desmond Bane, particularly on FanDuel, where I think he's actually going a little under-owned. Tyus Jones is just playing 32 plus minutes every time out there as this game stays competitive. How do we get away from all of these Memphis guys, or don't we?
I don't really think you do. The ownership's not too crazy on DraftKings. I mean, 36% is obviously a lot for Jackson, 41% for Brooks, but he's got a 31% usage rate without Morant on the floor this year. He's likely, if this game's competitive, to play 36 plus minutes. There's plenty of guys for him to defend, obviously, on the Lakers. He's seen the playing time ramp up a bit. He dealt with some foul trouble last game, lost about a minute at the end because he got ejected. But I think, you're seeing 36 plus. If this game's close, he's going to shoot a ton. And what I talked about with Greg this morning is that, so he's not an efficient shooter. We know that, but he doesn't. And so he's going to keep shooting. Without Morant on the floor in 220 minutes, not only does he have a 31% usage rate, he only has a 47.9% true shooting percentage, which I actually look at as a positive because he's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute over that time. I'm not saying that I think Dylan Brooks is going to suddenly become a good shooter, but he's going to have some games where he just shoots at an above average rate because that's how averages work. So he can, just do his normal miss, most of his shots and keep firing them up and average a fantasy point per minute. That's kind of giving you like pretty close to what the floor is for him. So, it's not like it's been on the back of hot shooting or anything.
All right. The next one is probably, I don't want to say the elephant in the room because that doesn't make any sense, but DeAnthony Melton is 20% owned on FanDuel, 30% owned on DraftKings. DeAnthony Melton is 5,700 on FanDuel and still 20% owned. I don't think that that's all that crazy or anything, but like that's a big time price tag for a guy that isn't starting.
Yeah, and who doesn't typically play a ton of minutes. Like he's someone that I think should play more minutes, but for whatever reason he doesn't. I think it's likely that you get 22 to 24 minutes from him. He's averaged 1.16 DraftKings points per minute, 1.12 FanDuel points per minute without Morant. So if he does play 22 to 24 minutes, he looks very good on DraftKings. He looks passable on FanDuel, but it is a situation where the ownership is probably pretty close to where I would start to draw the line.
Yeah. Okay. He came out of my sim like basically on that mark, which is kind of interesting to me. Conchar, Tillman, your boy Aldama.
I don't really see
it there. Yeah.
I don't either because they've been using Killian Tilly. If they would take him out of the rotation, it would make these guys look better, but they're just adding a body. So like last game, for example, you got 12 minutes from Conchar, you got 9 from Aldama, you got 10 from Tillman, you got 19 from Tilly. None of that is doing you any good at all. If you took those 19 minutes and spread them around the Conchar, Aldama, and Tillman, then you could talk, but I don't really see much from those guys.
I think we're on the same page there. What are your thoughts on Kyle Anderson being upgraded to questionable from doubtful?
I don't really know. If he plays, then if he plays at 4K, I don't mind taking shots at him. Like I would be much more likely to try and get some Kyle Anderson than I would be to get to any of the 4 random dudes we just talked about.
Who does he affect?
Potentially Steven Adams, like because you can get more Jaren Jackson at the 5. If Anderson's playing, like if they wanted to.
Do we want that to happen?
From a fantasy production standpoint, yes. From a how long is he going to be on the floor before he fouls out? Probably not. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think like it could affect Jackson in the sense that maybe he would go back to playing like 31, 32 minutes. But I think it's more likely that if it has the most likely, I think, is that he would just impact the end of the bench guys. Like Killian Tilly's 19 minutes become Kyle Anderson's, and then he's probably not playing that many more minutes anyway. But if it did affect one of the main pieces, I think Adams is probably the most likely.
Okay. Hassan Whiteside is active, by the way.
Okay. Cool. Can't wait to get way more of him than I want.
Let's have the active conversation for Memphis. What are you looking at from a group's perspective here? Because this is a team where you're going to get a lot of ownership on a lot of guys. How are you willing to have combinations?
This one's tricky because they play so many positions.
Yeah.
Tyus Jones has pretty much always been closing.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing him like having to be in a situation where I don't have him in like he should be in everything, sort of.
So I think it's max 2 of Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, and DeAnthony Melton.
Yes.
The reason I mentioned Jones was that you could do something where you make like a second group maybe where it's, I don't even know, max 2 of Jones, Bane, Melton, and then max 2 of Jones, Brooks, Melton. But like, I don't think Melton is closing over Jones. I think it's more likely that he would close alongside him.
I think we are on the same page for that one. Are you seeing anything else?
No, sometimes on bigger slates, I do max one of Jackson and Adams because he is so much more productive at center. But with Morant being out and it being a small slate, I don't really care.
Okay. If Anderson is in, does that change anything you're saying right now?
Oh, so and one obvious one, just because it is a 3-game slate, like normally they wouldn't even make it into the player pool, but I playing a maximum one of Contra, Aldama, Tillman, and Tilly.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would add Kyle Anderson to that group. If Kyle Anderson's in, I think probably maybe like a max 2 of Adams, Jackson, and Anderson, but I don't know that one would even really matter.
Okay. This is a fascinating spot for Memphis. The Lakers are going to end up beating them by 40. It's going to be your boy Aldama again. You're going to be like,
right.
Yo, I have 87% at lock. I swapped down to 40. Oh, I don't have him with Jackson again.
Yeah, that would have been a really
here?
good slate for me.
Yes, it would have. Anything else here?
No, I think that covers Memphis.
There's so much ownership coming in. It's all warranted. Like that's when it's really crazy. When you know, all right, this will be another question that I think will be important. And I know the first thing you're going to say is I haven't built a cash lineup yet, but how comfortable are you for Memphis guys in a cash lineup? I believe that I had 4 earlier today when I ran mine. But just curious, I know that's a question we tend to get, like how many Memphis guys can you have in the lineup?
In cash, I have no issue with however many you get. But I mean,
yeah,
like, because Jackson is, I think, clearly one of the better cash options. Brooks on DraftKings probably has to be there. Again, I haven't built a cash lineup, so don't take that as total gospel, but I'd be really surprised if Brooks isn't showing up. Melton is reasonable. Jones is reasonable. Adams is reasonable. And normally I don't throw guys out as reasonable in cash because I have a cash lineup built and I believe that there's like one cash lineup or at least something very, very close to it. But just without having built one, like I wouldn't be surprised if those guys ended up in my best projected lineup. They're not a lock to like Jackson and Brooks are, but I could see getting to 4 of those guys and not having an issue.
Rob S says, very dumb if you're playing Triple J tonight.
I'm sure he makes a lot of money just not playing guys that are 40% owned.
Yes. He's just a fantastic play. There's no way around it. What usage rate do you give him for today?
What'd you say?
What usage rate did you give him for today?
I haven't done my projections yet, but I'll use 29.7, whatever he's at for the year. Without Morant.
I went to 29 on this one.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, no, I love those takes where it's not like I don't like Jackson at that ownership because of like his fouling. Like whatever, I think I'm going to play him anyway, but that's at least reasonable. But like, yeah, you're dumb for playing probably the best play on the slate.
Yeah. I'll say this much. Make sure everybody that like has a stance against it goes and checks out the ownership of some of the more highly regarded players in this industry after this slate starts. You're going to see a heavy dosage of Jaren Jackson, and particularly in like smaller field, high dollar stuff. The dude's going to be in everything.
Yep.
Especially on FanDuel. I mean, FanDuel, that $6,200 price tag is wild. I love it. Go Memphis. I hope.
My apartment like just started shaking. I thought it was like in an earthquake or something, but I think we're good.
You're all right?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I think we're good.
Is it the new VR headset just still vibrating over there for you? Jordan, you got my trifecta pulled up? Let's do it, baby. We haven't done it in like 2 or 3 weeks, but it is time for the trifecta. 3 bets, 3 player props, straight out of Odds Shopper. You guys are getting the goods. Normally, you guys could just go to Odds Shopper, look through these yourself if you want to. We rank everything by expected win percentage, expected ROI. You could sort through everything that we have there. It's all there right in front of you. I went through and gave you guys the goods. First and foremost, and Adam, I'm hitting you with all of these, so I want to know where you land. Rudy Gobert, over 12.5 points tonight. That is the first one. That is my points prop bet. I personally, you guys can see it on the screen or go to Odd Shopper to see where the site has them. I personally, for today, have Rudy Gobert at 15.7 real points, well over the 12.5 mark. How do you feel about Rudy Gobert over 12.5 points today?
I'll take the under.
Really?
With Whiteside in, yeah.
You're the worst. Jordan, mute Adam for the rest of this segment. Next up, rebounds. Aaron Gordon over 5.5. I have Aaron Gordon projected for 6.7 rebounds. Another one running in lockstep with everything at OddsShopper. Adam, over under 5.5 rebounds for Aaron Gordon. And if you say under again, I really will mute you.
Over.
There we go. Understanding the gimmick gets it here. Derek White over 4.5 assists is the final prop in the trifecta. Derek White, for me personally, projected for 5.1 assists. It's another over on OddsShopper. Adam, how do you feel about Derek White over 4.5 assists?
Over.
There it is. Gets it. That's the trifecta, everybody. Last time we did this, we just missed out on the 3-0 day. We went 2-1.
Do you want me to tell you which one you're going to miss out on?
Probably the Rudy Gobert one, based on the way that you're talking.
Wait. Did you say Gobert or Gay?
Gobert.
Oh. What was it?
12.5 points.
Oh, way over.
This guy. Come on, man.
I was like, why are you throwing me a Rudy Gay prop? Like, who cares?
That's a great question. I would never throw you a Rudy Gay prop.
And then I was really confused how the hell you had him scoring.
Well, when you were like, Whiteside's in, I was like, oh, okay. So you're taking him from like 34 to 32 minutes and it was a snap no before.
I was extremely confused why you had Rudy Gay scoring 15 points tonight.
No, well, I don't. I have Rudy Gobert doing that. So we're in agreement. 3 straight overs here now.
Yep.
This guy. Oh my God. Get me somebody else. Jordan, take Adam out of here. You're coming on for the rest of this one. We're going to close this one out. That is the trifecta, everybody. Make sure you're tailing these bets. Let me know how you do tonight. And if we go 0-3, don't message me at all. Message Adam. You ready to close this one out?
Yep.
All righty. We are on to the Denver Nuggets at the San Antonio Spurs. Denver, 2.5-point dogs, 215 total. We saw Denver play yesterday. I did not play the slate. Nikola Jokic smashed. I've had 3 times the field of Nikola Jokic for the better part of 2 weeks. Spoiler alert. I've got a ton of Nikola Jokic tonight. I'm quite confident that he's going to have like 15, 12, and 11 and not be worth his salary. How do you feel about Nikola Jokic?
Obviously, like getting to him quite a bit. The ownership on him is reasonable at 26%. That did come up a little bit from this morning, if I remember correctly, but he just looks really good here. There's not great value to get him into lineups, but I think there's still enough that you can, do some creative things. You can still make some good lineups with Jokic. He's by far the best per minute fantasy producer on this slate, around 1.85 DraftKings points per minute without Porter this year. The only mild concern I would have is that they did have the overtime game last night. He played about 37 minutes. So in regulation, he played like 32. I don't know if maybe they, run another little bit of abbreviated rotation and he plays 32 minutes again, but I think pretty easily the top projected guy tonight.
Yep. We're on the same page. I'm getting to him. I'm quite confident that I'm not going to get what I needed to. It's going to be super duper irritating, but it happens. There's nothing else I could really do about it. Who stands out to you from the rest of Denver? Like on FanDuel, we've got Will Barton and Aaron Gordon in the 30s in ownership, which to me feels about right. But everybody else on DraftKings, because of their price tags, are all sort of in like the 10 to 15 range. So what else are you doing with the Nuggets?
Yeah, so I don't really like any of the other Nuggets, but their ownership is sort of appealing just for it being a 3-game slate. Will Barton's averaged 0.9 DraftKings points per minute in the games he has started with Jokic active and Porter out. He's averaged about 36 minutes per game or 35 minutes per game. So he looks reasonable. Aaron Gordon and Monte Morris both look reasonable as well. I don't mind kind of throwing darts at the backups here, though. Bones Highland's 3,500. He's getting 10% ownership. He only played about 16 minutes last game. I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but he's a much better per minute guy than Danny Green. If for one reason or another, Highland picks up a few extra minutes, he probably beats Green. So I think that's an interesting spot given the ownership gap. Campazzo played 22 minutes last game. Like ideally from a fantasy standpoint, those like extra 6 minutes go to Highland. Again, you get 16 from Campazzo, 22 from Highland. But even if Campazzo plays 22 minutes, he can conceivably beat Danny Green as well. He's getting less ownership. So those two are somewhat interesting. And I even mentioned Zeke Naji this morning because the slate is so small. He only played about 8 or 9 minutes last game. But if you get Jeff Green in foul trouble or you get Aaron Gordon in foul trouble potentially, you can get more run for Zeke Naji. And he's a very good per minute producer. So it's a situation sort of like Malik Monk, except even thinner, even riskier. But it's just one of those where it's not going to work out very often, but when it does work out, it probably works out extremely well for you.
I missed the super chat earlier from Darren Unger. It was a FanDuel question, so I'm going to hit it. And it's a 3v3. And Darren, you're not going to like this answer, but it's Anthony Davis, Will Barton, and I assume Monty Morris, or Aaron Gordon, Tobias Harris, and Donovan Mitchell. If those are the guys that are in this group, I have that 3v3 separated by 400ths of a point. So I don't have an answer. Like I legitimately don't.
Whichever one's lower owned.
Yeah. So that's I guess the answer in that question. But yeah, I mean, that is as coin flip of a group of three guys as you're going to find on either side. Separated 106.2 to 105.8. Nothing I can do there. Sorry, Darren. And then we got another one from Gabriel that said THT or Boyan on FanDuel, last man in a GPP. I have Boyan at 22.8 fantasy points. I have THT at 25. So THT. Thank you for those super chats, guys. Sorry, it took a little bit. Deeper Dive's a little bit different for that kind of stuff. We don't have the same sort of time. We do have 12 minutes to go, though. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this Will Barton, Aaron Gordon ownership on FanDuel. Like, for it to get into the mid to high 30s, especially for Aaron Gordon, who only has power forward eligibility. I like him. He graded out really, really well in the contenders. I think I had him 5th, but I think it's just sort of easier to go to another guy at 34% ownership. So right now I only have 20. I'm getting to a little bit more Monty Morris, where he's only 19% owned. I'm basically flip-flopping Monty Morris and either Will Barton or Aaron Gordon, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Team Jokic, though, that's for sure.
Yep.
Dave DeRimmer in chat wants to know any Denver groups. This one's kind of easier, I think.
Yeah, let me pull that back up. So, max one of Jokic and JaMychal Green always. Not that you should really be getting the JaMychal Green anyway. Max one of Campazzo, Highland. Max one of, or max two of Jeff Green, Aaron Gordon, Zeke Naji. Max. If you didn't want to do max one of Campazzo Highland, you could also do max two of Morris Campazzo Highland. But I would probably just lean with the Campazzo Highland one.
Yep, I'm with you. Denver's pretty cut and dry. Like, as ridiculous as it sounds, they're probably a team that you don't really need it for as much.
You're right. Like, I'm just not going to get lineups anyway that have both of Campazzo and Highland or anything.
Right, exactly. Thomas Kingston on Super Draft, AD at 1x or Embiid at 1.05x.
That's FanDuel scoring, right?
I don't even remember, if I'm being honest.
I'm pretty sure everything is FanDuel scoring except for DraftKings.
They're not the sponsor, so I haven't cared about them.
It was Davis and Embiid.
Yeah.
And Embiid's at 1.05.
Embiid gets an extra 5%.
I think the answer is Embiid. Like, Davis plays more minutes, but Embiid's the better fantasy producer, and you're probably only talking about a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if we're right and it is FanDuel scoring, I have Embiid ahead of him already.
Right.
So then it's Embiid pretty easily. I don't know what this guy's saying, but he's about to take a 5-minute break. Hope that's not true. I mean, I guess I don't mind, but I don't even want to say it out loud right now. Anything else you want to touch on for Denver?
No.
All righty. Well, let's talk about San Antonio. And we got the news earlier today. It's looking like Devin Vassell is going to be back. I want to start with him because I think it's an interesting question. How many minutes do you expect him to play? He's been out for 3 straight games. He missed 2 prior to the game where he returned, re-injured himself, and left again, only played 10 minutes. So he has essentially been out since November 24th. I'm a little nervous that I don't really see him stepping into big minutes. I gave him 23 for today.
Yeah, I was going to say 24 makes sense somewhere in there. Normally, if he hadn't been injured, this is a spot where I'd probably be expecting him to play around 30 minutes. But it seems pretty likely that he's at least somewhat limited.
Right. I didn't feel comfortable going too much higher. If he's able to just play those minutes, like, kudos. That's just not going to be my day for today. If he never came back and then got hurt and then went back out again, I don't know if I'd have the same sort of feeling, but it happened once already. I don't know how much they run him into the ground.
Yeah, that's
All
how
right.
I'm thinking about it as well.
Okay, good. Because that was the one thing where like that news came out after I did anything, so I haven't had a sounding board for that one yet. DeJounte Murray, 39.8% owned on FanDuel, 30% owned on DraftKings. How are you feeling about Murray on this one, where we do kind of have a lot of pay up options today?
Yeah, like I think Murray looks good. He's averaged about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's likely to give you 35 or 36 minutes. I don't have any issue with him, but he is one of the guys that I was referring, or the main guy actually, that I was referring to earlier when we talked about the Lakers, where I think that's a really interesting pivot spot in tournaments because even if he's a little bit better than someone like Westbrook, 1.3 fantasy points per minute to 1.16 or 1.15, whatever Westbrook's at with those guys in, you're getting like a 2.5 to 1 ownership discount going down to Westbrook for $200 more. He's more popular than LeBron for $400 more, than Davis for $300 more. So I do think maybe pivoting to one of the Lakers guys at a little bit lower ownership is one way that you can go here. Derek White's been playing better recently as well. That potentially could cut into Murray's production at least somewhat. Like I still think Murray's a very good fantasy producer one way or the other. What I'm saying, it's not even like an issue with Murray. It's more so just, I think the range of outcomes on Murray is more or less the same as the Lakers guys.
How are you feeling about this ownership coming into Derek White and Jakob Poeltl? 26% and 29% for White and Poeltl, respectively. Poeltl is a guy that I'm probably going to end up not really getting much of on the FanDuel side, but I'm curious your thoughts on DK.
I think he looks pretty good on DraftKings. He's 6,400. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. He's likely to give you 30 to 32 minutes. He just looks like a solid option that, projects well from a median standpoint, but also has a pretty high ceiling.
Okay.
And then Derek White, like I said, he's someone that I wasn't playing a lot early in the year, but he has really picked it up lately, not only in terms of production, but also in terms of his usage, jumping up to about 22.5% over the last 10 games. It's 24% over the last 5. So it seems like he's been just, playing better recently and then obviously producing at a better fantasy rate.
A guy that I'm a little interested in today is Drew Eubanks. 3,800 on FanDuel, power forward, center eligible, flat 3K on DraftKings. And I don't know if we could read into it all that much, but they excised Thad Young from the rotation this past time out and went straight to 15.5 minutes for Drew Eubanks. If he is the backup center for San Antonio, and that is the plan, he is just foul trouble on a 30% owned Jakob Poeltl away from getting a couple extra minutes. He's productive in those minutes, and he is the flat minimum.
Yeah, I'm there with you. The only concern I have is, do they use him against Jermichael Green or do they go back to Thad Young?
Yep. I have no idea.
Because I mean, like last game, it was Mitchell Robinson. The game before that, they split first half, second half. So I'm with you. I think just based on recent games, it's probably Eubanks. But like the thing is, if it is Young, then I would want to play him too. Like if you tell me Young's getting 14 minutes or 12 minutes, I don't mind throwing darts at that either. But I'm with you. My guess is that it's Eubanks, just based on how the rotation is played out for most of the season.
Yeah. Who starts?
Murray, White, McDermott, KBD, Poeltl.
Okay. So you don't think Vassell starts?
No.
Neither do I, but we're on the same page. How many minutes can you expect for Keita Bates-Diop today? He is a tricky piece for me.
24-ish.
Yeah, I go into 22. That fifth spot, and like the fifth spot in their closing lineup is pick it out of a hat, right?
Yeah, it's whoever's playing the best out of Keita Bates-Diop, Vassell, Walker. Yeah.
Forbes.
Oh, yeah, Forbes. Forgot about him.
Yeah.
McDermott.
Yeah. Not that.
Oh, wait, well, yeah. McDermott's in there anyway, I guess.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do you have any interest in any of these guys? McDermott, like Lonnie Walker was obviously the value play du jour earlier today before we thought Vassell was going to be there. Now a little bit less so, but are you getting to Walker, Diop, Forbes? Where are you going here? Are you getting to Vassell? Luckily on FanDuel, he's 5K and just shooting guard eligible, so I don't have to feel all that bad. Yeah,
4,100 on DraftKings, I still think is fine. I think I'll probably just end up kind of mixing those guys around. I don't have a strong preference. The one thing that does stand out is that Keita Bates-Diop right now is projected for 4% ownership, but that's we obviously just aren't expecting him to start. So
he's also bad on a fantasy, like on a
that basis too. So like even if he did, like the only reason him starting even matters is that it makes me think he would play like 22 to 24 minutes. If he doesn't start, I'm giving him like 16 to 18. But it's just those guys are pretty interchangeable to me. Walker and Vassell are the better fantasy producers. McDermott's minutes seem pretty safe. Ketabates, Diop, and Forbes are both cheap and low owned and terrible.
I really wanted Vassell to be out here to see how the entire industry projected Thad Young. Because he hasn't played a single minute alongside of Eubanks or Jakob Poeltl all year. So like, I was just
for sure would have been projected
adding all that. Oh yeah, as a guy playing like backup power forward run.
Yep.
I immediately started like adding up all the minutes there just to see if that's how it was shaking out this morning. I just wanted to gloat so bad later tonight. It was all I wanted. Thad Young is ruining my life. That dude's going to play today. I'm going to play Drew Eubanks, and Thad Young is absolutely going to be the backup center for the.
Do you think
Spurs.
It's crazy to just project both guys for like 12 minutes and then obviously don't play them together?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'm thinking I might do that. Like, I won't get a lot of either one. I'll get a little bit in 150 lineups, and I really have no idea what they're going to do.
What's Thad's price? I mean, that's really okay. Yeah, I didn't even look at
that's the problem. He's at the price where I don't think he's going to play, but if I'm wrong and he does, I would really, really like to have some of them. So it's one of those, like, I don't want to just give him the minutes because I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm also just aware that this is just a educated guess and nothing more.
2,000 people in here, 300 likes. We got to bump that number up quite a bit as we transition this over to the live book for Lock Crew, especially while Adam gives us his favorite plays for today.
I forget about that part. Nikola Jokic always is one of my favorite plays. Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks. I like Poeltl quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, those guys really stand out.
Stephen Leibowitz says, discussion point. What NBA team could use Thad Young? All contending teams. Yeah. Every single one of them that has any sort of major playoff aspirations. On FanDuel, for me, most exposed as of right now, Jaren Jackson, Tobias Harris, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones. And I dropped a quarter. Anyway, that's everything. Live Before Lock is coming up right now. Do not leave this stream. Stay right here. You've got one more hour going up until lock. We do have some news coming in, so be ready for it. Good luck tonight, everybody. Win a little bit of cash. We're back again tomorrow, doing it all once again. Stay here. Live Before Lock is next.
Is going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Live Before Lock show presented by Yahoo Fantasy. I'm Eric Lindquist. Skol. We'll get that out of the way right off the bat here. Excited for some Vikings football because it's a win-win. Either they end up taking down Pittsburgh or we fire Mike Zimmer. So I'm excited about tonight. I hope you are too. But of course, we've got 3 games of NBA action to break down, and I've got my buddy Craig Ehrenberg. We've basically been a tandem here for the entire week. We were the tandem last week. He's just forever hitched to my wagon. That's a weird way of putting that. But Greg, how you doing, my dude?
Whack. 3-game slate, and not really my favorite. There isn't a whole lot of value. There's a whole bunch of chalk. A lot of it I think is justified. And who knows, maybe in the next 58 minutes, we'll get some kind of crazy injury news that'll change everything.
Yeah, I'm playing a bunch of hockey lineups over on DraftKings tonight. I think on FanDuel.com is where I'm going to put my NBA. Don't shake your head at me. I love all of the information we have from Jake Hari. If you have the projections, if you have Awesemo Plus, there's no reason that you can't play multiple sports with multiple lock times. We're going to be doing this, hockey, NFL's coming up. I'm excited about it. But of course, we are talking this 3-game NBA slate. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell so that you can get some good juju going into tonight. A lot of DFS action, a lot of money to be won. Let's get to it. Greg Ehrenberg, what are the keys for this slate here for you tonight?
The keys are the Memphis Grizzlies, the San Antonio Spurs, and Nikola Jokic. In summary, like, if people just wanted to watch the show for 30 seconds, like what do we build our lineups? It's Memphis Grizzlies, San Antonio Spurs, Nikola Jokic.
I think that's a pretty foolproof plan to kind of put those guys together. I think it's just fine by me. I think over on FanDuel, 11-1 for Joel Embiid. I don't really care for Nikola Jokic. I don't really care. He's my most rostered center that's going to be over there. Joel Embiid getting a little less rostership, but again, I just don't care. I'm going to be focusing on Nikola Jokic here as well. I'm looking forward to this slate maybe a little bit more than you are for FanDuel purposes. DK, I don't really like playing over there today. I don't really like the way the pricing's coming together and the way my lineups work, and I don't really want to be rostering Hassan Whiteside. I think that might be part of it, but maybe you do. Maybe you're in a different camp than me. Jordan Klein just gave me a look. Do you want to roster Hassan Whiteside tonight, Jordan Klein? Yeah, I didn't think so. He's.
I don't even know what that's in reference to. Like, why do we have to play Hassan Whiteside? Is that a thing that we have to do?
Yeah, I think it's a thing that you kind of are forced into. There's just so many of these like random value pieces over on DK, whether it's Hassan Whiteside, Zeke Naji. There's because of the softer pricing over on FanDuel today. I'm less inclined to have to play in like the $4 or the $15 on DK. Or, over on Yahoo, they've already done such a good job of filling out all of those contests on Yahoo for NBA tonight. They're 500 entries away from filling the $10. Head over there, finish that up for us. And we'll talk about some of their pricing here as well. Talk about Yahoo a little bit later. But I just think because of the softer pricing, I'm forced into less egregious plays than what I feel like I have to do on DK to try to be different.
Yeah, I mean, you just throw out some names that I wasn't expecting at all. Like, I didn't know that Hassan Whiteside was an essential play to get to. I don't have him projected particularly well, so that caught me off guard. I'm just saying.
I understand. I mean, I was listening to the second half of the show beforehand, and obviously they were talking a little bit about Jakob Poeltl. If he gets in foul trouble, what are the repercussions of it? And on 3-gamers, we just got done doing a show about Obi Toppin basically 2 days ago. Not saying that those are the kind of things that you have to be forced into. But I think if you're playing large field GPPs, something is going to break a certain way and you kind of got to be on the right side of it over on DK. That's just kind of the way that I feel about this slate. It's going to come down to something fluky. Not that most nights don't come down to something semi-fluky here to a certain extent, but just projecting out some of these value pieces is pretty brutal for me over on DK. It's really Memphis Central, I think, on both sites, but specifically over on DK, just a pretty weird slate for me to be getting involved in. But of course, let's go position by position because maybe that'll clear it up for me. Maybe I'll enter some more lineups here as we go. But on the top end of guard, in terms of rostership, we've got Tyus Jones, DeAnthony Melton. Let's just put all of these guards. Let's put Dylan Brooks in there as well. What are some of the priorities that you have for the Memphis Grizzlies tonight?
For the Memphis Grizzlies at guard, I mean, I like Dylan Brooks once again. I liked him a whole bunch yesterday. He's going to be popular, but it's not really an issue for me. So look at Dylan Brooks yesterday. He didn't have a terrible game, but he didn't have a great game either. On DK was priced at 6,100. FanDuel was 5,800. Off the top of my head, he scored high 20s fantasy points, which once again wasn't great, but wasn't terrible either. But He picked up 2 personal fouls a minute and a half into the game and had to come off the court. He also got ejected late in the fourth quarter. So all in all, he probably lost out on like 6 or 7 minutes of playing time. Still got to 33, but I really do think with Dillon Brooks, he's somebody who, number one, he's going to shoot a lot. We know that for sure. Usage rate over 30% since Ja Morant got hurt. But in addition, also, the minutes have massive upside for him. We have not really seen that play out yet, though, just because of game situations. So the Memphis Grizzlies in recent games have not played in very many competitive games. Almost every game since Dillon Brooks has come back from injury has been decided by 12 or more points. He's also had foul trouble at times. So I think that if this game stays competitive, which the spread implies it will, we're probably looking at 38 or so minutes from Dillon Brooks.
Yeah, I was lower on Dillon Brooks yesterday, and now I'm going to be on Dillon Brooks today. There's really no way around it. I think that he's a pretty essential play on this slate, no matter which site you're playing on. Makes a lot of sense to get to. Ranking him over on FanDuel, where I'm going to have more of my NBA exposure. I mean, he's just such a key part over at the small forward position. You can play him at shooting guard as well, but going to be pretty popular for me here. Looking at the rest of the guards, Tyus Jones, he's so popular on FanDuel today at 5,800. Nearly 50% rostership. I think that might be one where I shy down a little bit here and just side with the chalk of Dillon Brooks. Apparently, I've never been right on a chalk play. All I do is play chalk play. So eventually I'm going to be right? That's kind of how that works, but whatever. Rest of the position. Let's jump back over to DK here for a second. Derek White, DeJounte Murray, the San Antonio Spurs. We've seen a crazy amount of upside for them, and they are kind of next in line there, right around 30% for them as well. Just a tiny bit lower than Tyus Jones, DeAnthony Melton. But how do you kind of look at those two on this slate?
So Tyus Jones and DeAnthony Melton, those were the 2 players you're asking about?
No, DeJounte Murray and Derek White.
Oh, did you not just say Tyus Jones and DeAnthony Melton?
I just said that they were lower, a little bit lower owned. It's okay. You don't have to listen to me. I don't listen to myself. It's fine.
No. I'm listening. It was just
Jordan Klein. Who's right? Who's wrong? I literally just said that. Let's talk about the 2 San Antonio Spurs guards. They're a little bit lower owned than Tyus Jones and DeAnthony Melton. Said they're a little bit lower owned, just like slightly.
All right, I blame
Eric. This is
Eric's
great entertainment value.
Eric is always wrong in my opinion. But as for the Spurs guards, DeJounte Murray and Derek White. So DeJounte Murray is in my player pool, but once again, I'm finding it a little bit difficult to get to him quite as much as the field does. My priority spend-up option today is Nikola Jokic. And Nikola Jokic is very expensive today. So it's hard to really fit in multiple stars into lineups, particularly on DraftKings. And if I'm going to prioritize spending up for Jokic, that's going to kind of limit the amount that I get DeJounte Murray into my lineups. As for Derek White, he's usable on DK to me. The FanDuel price point is so crazy high, though. I can't reasonably want to roster him at 7,900, and the field is actually kind of getting to him. 7,900 for Derek White, is that too steep for you? No,
not at all. I'm happy to get to him here on this slate. Again, it's a 3-gamer. I'll pay up for upside kind of at any position, and I can still get up to DeJounte Murray. I have no problem getting to him here on this slate. Getting to Nikola Jokic and him together, I don't think is that difficult to do, especially over on FanDuel and Yahoo, which are the 2 sites that I'm playing NBA on the most. So I'm happy to be getting to both of them here in this spot. Rest of the guard position, as we're working our way down. Desmond Bane, there's a lot of these ancillary pieces that we can try to kind of make a thing. We have some cases that can be made for Lonnie Walker, who just got done burning the entire universe. His minutes have been trailing down here, but I don't really know what to make of this Popovich rotation here. Going through popcornmachine.net, it's a fascinating thing. Thad Young ends up in the rotation, then he's out of the rotation, he's back in. We don't really know how it's going to look. Devin Vassell, is him being in and out at certain times. It's just been very, very unpredictable. We've seen Josh Primo minutes here as well. What are you kind of making about some of these value pieces in the mid tier that feel very, very thin?
Yeah, so Lonnie Walker is just here. He's viable, right? And I'm overweight to the field. I'm overweight to the field on him right now. If you're asking me for an exact minutes projection, it's impossible to know. Greg Popovich doesn't know. It's going to be something that just he kind of feels out and does as the game goes on. Because we've seen from Lonnie Walker massive minutes and limited minutes, and there hasn't really been any rhyme or reason. So last game, Spurs shorthanded, and he ends up playing 16 minutes. All right. So then you look at some other games. Well, 3 games ago, he played 30 minutes. The game before, he played 20 minutes. Then he had 15 minutes, 24 minutes. The playing time is all over the map. And for a 3-game slate, we're trying to capture upside. I think the upside is worth chasing. But if you're asking me for security on Lonnie Walker, I can't guarantee that whatsoever.
Security is not the name of the game for this slate for a lot of things. I mean, we have security in the chalk. It's already very, very prominent. I mean, especially FanDuel. I mean, we're seeing some massive ownership on these guys in secure spots. And then, 3-gamer, you got to be willing to take risks in large field GPPs, no doubt about it. Lonnie Walker going to be a piece that I'm going to be overweight on as well, which is ironic because he was a piece that I was probably the lowest on. But if he goes off in that last spot, even in 20 minutes or so, I mean, he only played 16 there against the Knicks, but if he plays 20 minutes and puts up 28 fantasy points, he's doubly as popular as what he is today. That's just kind of how the recency bias works. So I think it is a piece to be overweight and just kind of hope that those minutes kind of fluctuate back up. There's this constant back and forth where we're trying to figure it out, but he's doubtful. You're not going to see Devin Vassell here again. And I think that there is some hope that he can be played. Another guy that I think you can play.
Vassell isn't doubtful.
Vassell isn't doubtful? Am I not looking at this right? He's playing? Okay, cool.
Well, he's probable.
Oh, he's probable now. Okay, cool. I had him listed on my sheet as doubtful, whatever reason. So sorry. Bryn Forbes, a guy who was in the rotation.
Sorry, but just does that change your outlook on Lonnie Walker at all?
I mean, I already liked Lonnie Walker. Devin Vassell, I mean, I got to like Devin Vassell. He's going to be half the rostership there. I got to be thinking I'm going to get to, 5K over on FanDuel, though. That's a larger number. I was looking at the DK play here. Devin Vassell, $4,100, $400 more than Lonnie Walker. I'm still going to be over on Lonnie Walker. It doesn't completely change that for me. Obviously, there's the projection next to it. I should be able to realize those things. But yeah, Devin Vassell with that rotation, 24 minutes. We're projecting Bryn Forbes in that rotation as well, 3,400. That's another piece that, he's going to be shooting dependent. He's going to come in and chuck and hopefully make some shots in his limited minutes. But I think he's still maybe in play there at the bottom end of 3,400. Just this Spurs team, we could find some random value. You could also get very, very burned. But Lonnie Walker definitely can be a flamethrower from time to time. Happy to go to him at his current rostership. If he were popular, I'd be shying away from him. Again, that's kind of how that works. Other guards, are there any guards that you're kind of getting to a little bit more than the field? I feel like a lot of these guys outside of Memphis, we haven't really discussed.
So other guys, I'm taking some flyers on Bones Highland, who points per dollar is not the best projected play for me, but on a 3-game slate, anybody that's cheap that has any potential upside, I want to get into my player pool. And Bones Highland, if you do look at his points minute production this year, we've seen games where he's gone off in limited minutes. 2 games ago, he's coming back from injury. He played 21 minutes. He scored 27 DraftKings points. We can't count that from him on a consistent basis in limited minutes, but we've seen games from earlier, about a month ago before he got hurt. 23 minutes, 32 DraftKings points, 21 minutes, 30 DraftKings points. So just that kind of upside is really hard to find in any other cheap players on the slate. So Bones Highland, who, let's see, what is the most recent run of ownership we had on Bones Highland? He is 10% owned right now over on DK. On FanDuel, we have him projected for 4% ownership. I think that upside is hard to find, and he's worth being overweight too.
Agreed. And I will say it's on a back-to-back here too. They played overtime. I could see some of the bench guys in that kind of a situation, maybe seeing a little bit extra run, maybe giving a little bit of an alleviated duties to some of the starters just on a back-to-back overtime, back-to-back specifically. So that is something that I factored in. I'm over on Bones Highland as well. I like that call by you. Let's see. I'm trying to just see guys that I'm a little bit more overweight or underweight on. I have no Seth Curry. I don't know really what to say about that. Even on FanDuel, just so shooting dependent, 5,400. He came off of a massive 41.8 game there against Charlotte. Do you have any Seth Curry, or are you getting to anybody on Philadelphia in bulk? Because it seems like a team that's just kind of forgotten for me on this slate.
So Joel Embiid, I think, is a pay-up option worth getting to. But if you're only playing one line, if you're playing cash games, Nikola Jokic is the priority for me over Joel Embiid. I have infinitely more, well, not infinitely more, but a lot more Nikola Jokic than Joel Embiid. The other guy who I'm getting to, at least on DK, Danny Green at 3,300. None of us like to roster Danny Green. There isn't a massive ceiling in Danny Green, but he's really cheap. He's going to be starting. He's probably going to play somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes. He scored over 20 fantasy points in back-to-back games. And that in itself works for this slate. If somebody's cheap and getting minutes, I want them in my player pool. So those are the two guys that I'm getting to the most from the 76ers, Danny Green and Joel Embiid.
Yeah, Danny Green definitely makes sense as kind of a savings piece on this slate. And Seth Curry's playing a lot of minutes. It's not that, but I just don't necessarily like him on this slate. I think that there's other plays that are just cheaper that could kind of come to fruition there. Just somebody that I thought I would get to at a lower number than, and knowing the kind of upside he's had recently, and I'm just not getting there. So Danny Green, I do like that call from that team. Shake Milton, obviously, we don't have to consider really with Tyrese Maxey back in the fold, but other guards here that on FanDuel, Russell Westbrook. Are you getting to any Russell Westbrook with his triple double upside? I thought his rostership might be even a little bit higher coming off of a decent enough outing where we finally saw all three studs kind of play well in conjunction with one another. 46.25 wasn't beating down, taking down any tournaments or anything, but has triple double upside anytime he's out there. He's sub 15% on DraftKings right now. Do you have any interest?
Not really. I found it really difficult to get to LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook when all of them are healthy. So I'm just going to pull some numbers up right now when all of them are on the court together. And it's so many guys that demand the ball, that take a lot of usage, and that really does cap these guys. So per 36 minutes, which of the trio of Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook do you think scores the most fantasy points when they're on the court together?
LeBron James?
Anthony Davis scores 40. He scores 44 fantasy points per 36 minutes. But LeBron and Westbrook both score under 40, 39.3 for LeBron, 36.3 for Russell Westbrook. I get that they've been priced down a little bit, but realistically, they just don't have that much upside when all of them are playing together. There's obviously going to be individual games where they go off, or sometimes there's been overtime situations this year, which that the game against Boston, that was a really high scoring game individually. But even with that said, Westbrook put up 46 DraftKings points. It's not like some crazy score. And at 9,900, it's not enough to win a tournament. So I don't think it's very likely that we see any of the Lakers star guys in the optimal lineup outside of some sort of overtime or crazy scenario or just an outlier game.
All righty. Any other guards that you want to discuss before we move ourselves along? Again, it's a 3-gamer. There's a limited number of things we can talk about. We could bring up just about every player that we wanted to on this slate, but we're not going to do that.
So other guards I'm getting to exposure to. I did not think I was going to play much of Tyus Jones at 6,000 on DK or over on FanDuel where Tyus Jones is 5,800. But as I'm building my lineups, there just aren't that many guys that I like at that kind of price point. So Tyus Jones has become a fairly high priority for me. I don't know that his ceiling is 50 or 40 fantasy points, but he's been pretty consistent around 30, and that could be enough on a slate like this where there aren't that many good points per dollar plays. So Tyus Jones makes sense. D'Anthony Melton for a cheap price point of 4,600. He's kind of like the Uber version of what we talked about with Lonnie Walker before. The minutes are pretty inconsistent with D'Anthony Melton. We don't know exactly what we're getting, but when he's on the court, he's a really good fantasy producer. And last game, for instance, plays 25 minutes, scores 29.25 DraftKings points. He's always been a guy that scores around a fantasy point per minute. So at his price point, he's a good value in my opinion.
All right, we got a $5 super chat from Joe K. Thanks, Greg and Eric. Switched off Hero and played Lowry. That was a big take that Greg and I had yesterday where we kind of just wanted to get to way more Lowry than we did Hero when Hero didn't start. Glad that ended up coming to fruition. Glad you could capitalize on that. But out of top 5 ownership, who is the best fade? I'm going to take a look over on DK. I hit refresh. I just want to make sure. So we've got out of those top 5, Dillon Brooks, Tyus Jones, Jaren Jackson Jr., D'Anthony Melton, DeJounte Murray. So we've got 4 Memphis guys and DeJounte Murray. The best fade for me out of all of them, I'll let you go first. I think it would be D'Anthony Melton for me, but go ahead. Give me your take.
I'm trying to scroll through to find the super chat so I could find what all the names are. Could you
He
read
just
them
said
to me
out
one
of
more
top
time?
5 ownership, who is the best fade? So
Oh,
he
out of the
doesn't
top
give the
five.
names.
All right. So top 5 ownership. And was this for FanDuel or DK?
Doesn't have anything listed for it. I just went DraftKings.
All right. So let's do it for DraftKings and FanDuel then.
Love it.
I think that's a good enough way to do it. So of the top 5 on DK, I think the one that makes for the most sensible fade is DeJounte Murray to me. I'd rather play Nikola Jokic at less ownership. Over on FanDuel, I would say DeJounte Murray is also really popular, but maybe Anthony Davis at 10,000 project for over 40% ownership.
That is kind of crazy. But I would much rather just play a ton of the chalk Jaren Jackson Jr. I would say Aaron Gordon, kind of crazy at 35.2%, but I guess that's not top five. Yeah, I think that out of the top five there, Anthony Davis definitely going to be siding with you there for the FanDuel slate. On DK, though, D'Anthony Melton, did you have any kind of a lean on out of the most rostered players over there, out of those top five, the four Memphis guys and DeJounte Murray, who you'd be lower on?
I went with Murray. I thought was the one that made the least sense to me on DK. And the pivot I said I like there is you could roster Nikola Jokic for less ownership. I get that he's more expensive, but I think there's way more upside in Jokic than Murray.
All right. Sounds good, everybody. Hey, we're off to a good start. Everybody's having fun. We got a feisty chat. We've got a feisty rapport going between Greg and I today. We don't know who's saying what or who's listening to what, but I'm excited about it because that makes for entertaining stuff. You know what also makes, go ahead, Greg, you wanted to say something. I saw it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the funny thing is I've got new headphones for the show. Earlier when I was recording stuff with Adam, I couldn't hear anything. My headphones crapped out halfway through the show and I legitimately couldn't hear, but don't worry, I can hear you. Yeah, I could hear you loud and clear. We're just not, just our rapport's off. We're not communicating well. Something is amiss.
Simpatico. We got to get back on track here. Maybe it's show burnout. Maybe you and I have done so many live before locks here in recent days that no, we're just fine. I think we're just fine here. Also, I got all my NHL lineups in. I know you were super concerned about that as well.
I was very concerned.
Going to be impossible to update those. Please, God, goaltenders do not change. Of course, there's going to be something that I have to change, but more late exposure anyway. But if you want to be able to play all the sports like I'm able to on a day like today, where we have NHL, NBA, NFL, a fantastic NFL game. Again, Skull, let's get going. Awesemo Plus tools and content right now, $29.95 for the weekly pass. But you can get 25% off using promo code NBA Live, all caps, one word, NBA Live, for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Check out everything we offer there. We have player projections, ownership projections, premium Discord channel where we've got News God. Oh, I see him. He's always hanging out over there in the chat. He's always helping you guys be able to be on top of the news, keeping you apprised of everything. Check out the premium Discord where he's updating everything constantly there. You can get updates directly to your phone. Lineup Builder. We have the Lineup Builder. Helps so much with NFL to be able to see the contrarian scores. These are tools developed by Alex Baker and the entire team. Steve Buzzard. We've got Eddie Lai, who just took down 100K in NBA. We've got so many guys. Sean's on unbelievable DFS players who are putting these projections together for every single sport imaginable. And you can have access to them for under that $29.95 using that 25% off promo code. Stop guessing, start winning, and join us here at Awesemo Plus today. I promise you won't be disappointed. All right, let's get ourselves over to Forward here. We've got 36 minutes before lock. While we're at it, everybody hit that like button. I think we need to bring that like count up a little bit here. Again, I think that'll really kind of get the train back on the tracks between Greg and I, being able to discuss everything here on this slate. We talked a little bit about Dylan Brooks here on the front side of this, but Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm getting way more than 33% over on DK. I'm getting way more than this 58.9%. I really don't care. I think I'm just going to be jamming him in as much as possible at 6,200. Pray to God he keeps his hands to himself. But even if he gets in foul trouble, it's a 3-game slate where I don't think the opportunity cost is that nuts at the position. How are you handling Jaren Jackson Jr. on this slate?
Yeah, so earlier in the day when I was doing the injury report segment that I do with Adam, the short VOD, we were kind of looking at potentially Brandon Clark maybe as a pivot option when he was listed as questionable. But hey, Brandon Clark is out, so we don't have that as an option to go to. Zaire Williams, he's out. And it's just hard to find who the cheap guy is that I'd want to pivot. So let's say Jaren Jackson Jr. gets into foul trouble. Who benefits at this point? I don't even know, because then you're starting to look like, are they just going to play John Conchar more minutes off the bench, Xavier Tillman, Santi Aldama? I don't want to roster any of those guys. So I don't really see a viable pivot play off of Jaren Jackson on Memphis. I haven't projected really well. So I'm finding it really difficult to keep him out of my lineups. I even tried nerfing his projection a little bit, and he still pops up in, a lot of my optimal stuff.
So many people. David Porter, I'm Team NAG. That's our friend, Nerd Ass Greg over there. He's got the best takes and the boss, in my opinion. I would agree with that. I think out of anybody else, it's definitely not me. We're going to go with Greg. All right, let's keep it on going. He's just a great play. I don't know who possibly could benefit. I'm not going to try to get super thin. And on FanDuel, I don't really have to, because it's softer over there. And I mean, maybe somebody like John Conter gets 25 minutes out of the middle, absolutely nowhere, but I don't see it happening here. I'm just going to be firing him up. I like Steven Adams. We'll talk about him over at center as well. I just feel like the minutes are really secure for a lot of these guys, but rest of the forward position here, I'm going back to DK here quick. Anthony Davis, I think you and I both kind of discussed that we're lower on him for this slate. LeBron James exists there. Danny Green, we're starting to get into on DK. It's a little bit flatter down here. Nobody other than Dylan Brooks and Jaren Jackson really blowing the position away. Who are you getting to more than the field at forward?
Let's see. So at forward, what is the current ownership for?
I mean, Danny Green's there. You liked him a lot.
Okay,
Royce
so
O'Neal's weird to me.
So, I mean, I do have Danny Green in my player pool, but he's actually somewhat popular, so I'm not that much different than the field on him. The forward that I'm most overweight to the field right now is Kyle Anderson. He's listed as questionable to play, and his minutes also have not been very substantial as of late. However, because he's questionable, a lot of people aren't rostering him right now. His salary is also really cheap. He hasn't played in a couple of weeks. But if he's in with Zaire Williams and Brandon Clark both out, and then obviously also John Morant out, we've seen Kyle Anderson play backup point guard minutes in the past. I think that it's being overlooked the potential upside Kyle Anderson has. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up playing something like 26 minutes if he's available. Also could play some minutes at point guard to spell Tyus Jones. So he's somebody at low ownership that I actually think at his price point has some upside. We just need to figure out whether he's going to be playing or not, but I'm well over the field on him.
As you started talking about him, we just got a message here from News God that he's a game time decision. It ended up popping up as well for me elsewhere. I was just kind of surprised and crazy how when you start talking about somebody that an update comes in mid conversation there, it happens more often than I would expect it to. But yeah, Kyle Anderson, game time decision officially. There aren't many guys that are going to be kind of something where you can late swap or take advantage of. Obviously, this slate is all compact. It all happens within an hour and a half of each other. But this Memphis game starting at 8 p.m. Eastern time makes sense to me to get to more Kyle Anderson for sure on this slate. Let's see if I got to any on FanDuel. Actually, I didn't think that I did originally. Yeah, no. So he's sub 10% there. I'm going to give him a little boost here. 4,700. That is just a low number for a guy that, again, I do expect him to be able to give it a go here. So I'm going to get to a little bit more here. Good call by you there. That's a piece that I like. Then let's talk Utah. We haven't talked about Utah here yet. Another just Utah Philly game starting up here at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm just going to have relatively little exposure to anything here, but Royce O'Neal's getting some rostership. Bojan Bogdanovic, Joe Ingles coming off of a nice game in limited minutes last night. Everybody knows how that goes with Joe Ingles. He plays well, then you roster him, and it goes very, very poorly the next. It feels like Rudy Gay, a talking point of the DraftKings slate. I've had a lot of people bringing him up in the chat. Is there anybody from Utah at the forward position that you're getting to at all?
Let's see. From the forward position, Rudy Gay is in my player pool, as is Royce O'Neal. So Rudy Gay is somebody who Adam talked about a little bit earlier in the day when I was doing my both the strategy show with him and the injury report show. And him liking was a little bit dependent on the time at Hassan Whiteside not playing. But I was looking through the box scores that we've seen from Rudy Gay, and he's had some upside. We've seen him in the last week. He's had games with 31 and 32 DraftKings points, and he's done it in relatively limited minutes. He's had a decently high usage rate coming off the bench. So even with Whiteside playing, we're not going to get a massive amount of minutes from Rudy Gay, but I view him very similarly to somebody like Bones Highland I talked about before. You could get 30 fantasy points out of Rudy Gay in 20 minutes. That's something that only a couple players who are priced under 4K could do on this slate. So Rudy Gay is somebody else who I think is a risky but upside value option.
I got a congratulations from Larry C for using the right time zone for the first time ever. You're so welcome. I apologize that out here that it's so nice every single day that I lose track of time. You know, that might be part of the issue. I loved having no snow. I do not miss it whatsoever. Oh my God. All right. So we've got other positions to be looking at here. Well, the rest of the forward position, that is. Taylor Horton Tucker. I know that was somebody that Adam and Josh had talked about a little bit there. And God, 5,500 is a pretty inflated tag over on DK for him. Not really going to be touching that, but 5,100 over on the FanDuel slate. That's a very intriguing option for me there. We just got the Sixers lineup. It's exactly what you would expect. But Taylor Horton Tucker, is that a piece that you are interested in at all?
No, he's not. And okay. I mean, we've seen some upside from him. So there's I can't say there's a non-zero chance that he has a big game, but it's so hard to project him well for me personally when he's playing alongside guys like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook. I view him pretty similarly to when I've talked about LaMarcus Aldridge a ton the last few shows. And I think that there's a parallel between him and somebody like Taylor Horton-Tucker. We saw some big games from THT when LeBron was out. But then when LeBron came back, he goes to the bench, and we saw some more usage from him when he was in the bench role, but it was in limited minutes. Then he goes into the starting lineup, and we saw some slates where Taylor Horton-Tucker was a little more popular. There's just not a lot of shots or ball handling duties for him to go around when he has to play with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook. And that makes it hard for me to give him a projection that makes him worth getting to.
All righty, let's get to some real dumpster dives here. Again, Kyle Anderson is a great call. He's sub 10% over on FanDuel. I really like that because everybody else below him, you're starting to get to some dicey territory. Danny Green, less of a talking point on that slate, 4,800. I don't really have to screw with that so much on FanDuel. Sure, he's in the starting lineup. You can have a little bit, but I don't want to get carried away. Over on DK, looking at the bottom of the forward board, guys that are sub 10%. Is there anybody that you can make a case for that you're getting to at sub 10% on that slate?
So sub 10%.
Yeah, I'm seeing if you're getting to any of the like doldrums down there on DK.
I don't think so. I'm just comparing my ownership to guys who are sub 10%. 10% is probably where, you know who I think is worth getting to actually sub 10%. And let's see, he doesn't have forward eligibility, whatever. I'm going off the board to answer your question anyway. I liked Malik Monk a bunch the other day.
Here we go.
And I don't, to be clear, I don't like Malik Monk very much today, but you asked anybody, it's sub 10% worth getting to.
Throwing it up.
I still think there's upside in Malik Monk, and his minutes totally evaporated last game. I get that Avery Bradley was back in the rotation and Avery Bradley started, but we saw recent games where Avery Bradley was active and Malik Monk still played over 30 minutes and scored over 30 DraftKings points. He'd been playing so well for the Lakers. It doesn't really make sense to me what happened to his playing time. You look at the last couple of games, he went for 33 minutes, 35 DraftKings points, 29 minutes, 33 and a half DraftKings points. He's been their best scorer off the bench. He was really giving the Lakers a shooting dynamic that they didn't have. And then last game, he plays under 20 minutes and scores 18 DraftKings points. And I was just kind of confused. And I can't reliably say he's going to get those minutes after what happened last game with Avery Bradley starting. But just the idea that nobody's playing him and he's had all these big games recently, I think that he's in the same category. I'm going to put three guys, Bones Highland, Rudy Gay, Malik Monk. I think any three of those guys are viable to go for 30 plus DraftKings points at really low ownership.
What's Carmelo on the DraftKings slate here right now? He's sub 10%. That's the one guy that I've kind of got circled. 4,500 for him right now, 8.9%. Is Carmelo going to be great on a fantasy point per minute basis here at this point in his career? No. But there are times that he's just going to get hot and he's going to stay out on the floor. I mean, even 21 fantasy points there at 4,500 in his last game that we're looking at, 4,600 he was. That tag has just kind of been trailing back down. Obviously, less minutes available when you have all three of those guys, less shots available when you have all three of those guys, Russ, AD, and LeBron on the floor alongside him. But Carmelo is somebody that I think you can still find some spiked upside. And against Memphis, again, I don't think that you're going to see that imposing of a spot here for him. So Carmelo sub 10%. I know that he's going to be a little bit more expensive than some of those guys you listed off that are just way down there at the bottom. Bones Highland, much cheaper. Some of those guys much cheaper. But I think eventually you're going to run into a Carmelo goes for 25 real points game. And I just don't see, a sub 10% on this kind of a slate. That's where I'm a little bit more intrigued to kind of take that dart. Is that somebody that you've looked at all?
Let's see. Carmelo, I do not really have exposure to today. Let me check out my projection for Carmelo. Yeah, I just didn't give him very many minutes. And once again, he's competing with Anthony Davis, with LeBron James, with Russell Westbrook for usage. And the minutes for Melo have really waned as of late. He had that stretch where he was playing pretty well for them. But recently he's been right around 20 minutes and he's so reliant on scoring. So you could get a game where Carmelo makes more than half his shots from the field and has a decent scoring night. He's not giving us rebounds for the most part. He's not giving us assists. He's not giving us defensive stats. That does make it difficult to say there's reasonable upside in Carmelo. I like to play these games.
When would you guess the last time you thought that he got over how many? Right.
25 fantasy. Over 26 fantasy points. When was the last time?
It's been forever. It's been a really, really long time. I don't know. Over 25 fantasy points. 25 isn't that low, but I'll go to like beginning. So let's say a month ago.
A month and a day ago against the Charlotte Hornets, he scored 41 DraftKings points. I assume that was when LeBron was, so LeBron was out that game, and I think that game went to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a realistic outcome to me.
See, saying realistic outcome, because again, he's sub 10%. It's not like I have some crazy, like I want people to be hitting me up on Twitter saying that I said go all in on Carmelo, and then he goes, 2 for 10 and doesn't end up doing it. I just think that there's enough ability for him to get hot in any random spot and be able to do it. Yeah, it hasn't happened for a month apparently. But even on this slate, if he gets to 25, 26, there are opportunities for him to kind of fall into not. I think it's not the worst play on planet Earth. I think you could probably find worse plays sub 10%. So I just wanted to kind of make a case for him just being one of those dudes who we've seen him go out there and score 25, 30 real points there from time to time, and maybe a month ago, but happy to try to make it a thing on this slate, just even to 20%, doubling that. Happy to go there. But the forward spot, I want to just kind of round out the position here. We'll talk a little Yahoo, we'll talk a little center, and we'll get out of here because we have, of course, the NFL Live Before Lock show coming up at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time with Lofty, the boss man, Alex Baker, and Ben Rasa. Dynamic trio. They're going to break down all the ins and outs of the Minnesota Vikings, and God forbid this game. I don't even know. I'm obviously going to be watching it. It's going to obviously break my heart, but whatever. Let's go to the rest of this forward position. Anybody else that you really have a burning desire to talk about as we round it out?
Yeah, Devin Vassell, who, to your point, he was listed as doubtful coming into today, but then he participated in shoot-arounds earlier, and the Spurs ended up upgrading him to probable. I do wonder if there's a lot of people who are just kind of still looking at that injury tag, because he's not projected for very much ownership. Nearly makes actually that sub 10% mark that you gave out before. He is on FanDuel, but he's a little more expensive at 5,000 at 8% ownership. I don't mind getting to more than 8% on FanDuel. Over on DK at 4,100, he's projected for 15% ownership. I like him a lot more than that number. I think we've talked about the minutes for the Spurs, and there's a lot of variability in the minutes. But when you're looking at somebody like Lonnie Walker, we could say all the same things about Devin Vassell, where the recent minutes for him, here are the last 6 games or 7 games for him. 30 minutes, 19, 24, 30, 20, 10. And the 10 was a game where he got hurt and had to leave early. So playing time all over the place, but there is potential for that upper part of minutes. And that's also something else. We're talking about guys like you mentioned Carmelo Anthony before. I'd rather play Vassell at 4,100 than Melo at 4,500 at comparable ownership, especially because I have Vassell projected for how many more points? I have Vassell projected for 3 more fantasy points at a cheaper price point. So I think that that's a decent place to go. And I do think the injury designation might be keeping some people away.
Yeah, I love targeting the injury tag. More people are building with optimizers than ever before. So, maybe fewer people get tripped up on it, but it seems to happen from time to time where you just get much lower ownership on a guy. Whereas if you take that tag away, Devin Vassell wouldn't exactly be any kind of a prohibitive play. So I don't mind that call whatsoever either. Rudy Gay, we've talked about a little bit here. We've talked about some of those ancillary forward options. I think that kind of does it. Jeff Green, J. Michael Green, any of those guys that you're getting to on this slate too. Denver plays Will Barton, somebody that isn't that popular. He has the tag next to him, but he's probable. I think he's good to go. So I'm not thinking about it too much. Anybody else maybe from the Denver side to discuss before we head on to center?
No, the only guys from Denver that I'm really getting to are Bones Highland and Nikola Jokic. Everybody else to me is just kind of whatever plays, and I don't really care. I don't really care about anybody else from the team.
Yep. Well, that's kind of how I feel here too. Bones Highland, of course. Yeah, Bones Highland. That'd be the other guy. Aaron Gordon on FanDuel. I don't want to do this. It just keeps popping up. I don't want to do it.
I do view Will Barton differently on FanDuel. FanDuel, I think he's certainly worth getting to at a 6,000 price tag. Mm-hmm. But over on DK, where we have Will Barton priced at What was the price for Barton?
It was 6,800, I believe.
Yeah, 6,800. That's too steep for me. The 6,000 on FanDuel is playable though.
Yeah, agreed. I think that makes sense. Also, what makes sense is going to Yahoo right now and playing, because you know why? Lowest management fees you're going to find in the entire DFS industry. We're talking 12, 13%. That is lower than the 15 to 17% rate that you're playing. And over a long period of time on these other sites, it is far more profitable to head to Yahoo for that reason alone. Another great reason to head to Yahoo. You get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you're a new user. All you do is deposit $10 or more, play in any paid contest whatsoever, the quarter, the dollar. They have a $20 200K overlay contest that they've been running pretty much every single Sunday this entire NFL season. We're talking about a negative 25% management fee. Oh, hold up. Dylan Brooks placed in health and safety protocol.
Well, that changes everything.
Shnikes. Okay, first thing, enter more lineups right now. If you can enter more lineups with 18 minutes left, I'm screw NHL. That I can burn that money to the ground. I don't care. Add more lineups if you can right now. Dylan Brooks is still going to be owned with 18 minutes left in this slate. And sure, that game doesn't come up till a little bit later, but I still promise there'll be 5-6% people that do not, or 5 or 6% of lineups that still have Dylan Brooks. You're going to get, speaking of no rake, and we'll get back to Yahoo here in a second. I promise they're the sponsor here of the Live Before Lock show, but that is gigantic news for this slate. Greg, obviously it just happened. Your initial reaction to it?
So the initial reaction is this changes all of my lineups because Dylan Brooks was one of my most exposed players. I thought he was an excellent option on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And I've been talking a lot about Dylan Brooks as of late. I don't like him as a player. I think he's massively overrated, but for the same reasons that I think he's overrated, I end up playing him a lot in DFS because he takes a whole lot of shots. So here's the trickle-down effect. Not only is there a lot of playing time available in Memphis, because I thought Dylan Brooks had a massive amount of playing time coming into him today, there's a lot of shots to fill. Dylan Brooks' usage as of late, it's over 30% since John Morant got hurt. That is so many shots to fill. We were talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. before, about how much we like him. I mean, he has to take more shots now, but who fills this usage is just crazy. I'm going to pull up the on-off court numbers because
I'm doing the same thing because DeJounte Murray, there are not a lot of minutes available with no DeJounte Murray and Dylan Brooks over the course of the last year and a half, but we're going to find them right now.
John Morant, you mean?
I said John Morant and Dylan Brooks. Did I say somebody else?
You said DeJounte Murray.
Good Lord. Okay. Maybe I am just out of my damn mind. It's this espresso. We got an espresso machine from our registry, and Melanie set it up here today. And let me tell you, I am caffeinated. I am very happy. Go ahead.
All right. So I've got this will be easy to figure out. Who do you think leads the Memphis Grizzlies in usage when we have Morant and Dylan Brooks off the court?
Jaren Jackson Jr. End of story.
Yes. 34.4%. Easy. That's an easy one. That's a layup. Mm-hmm. Second and third are going to be really close. I think you'll be able to figure out who they are.
Anthony Melton, Desmond Bane.
Yes. Desmond Bane, and they're very close. Higher? Desmond Bane, 26.8%. D'Anthony Melton, 25.9%. So, I mean, we look at these numbers now, and Bane, Melton, Jackson, I think all three of these guys are going to, just by necessity, become really pivotal plays today. I just don't know who else is taking shots for this team.
I mean, this is just enormous. It's crazy to have a guy. And again, I didn't like Dylan Brooks yesterday. I liked him a lot today. I found him impossible to get away from at 6,100. Well, it's going to be pretty easy to get away from him now. I think the right way to talk about this, because people are like 4 or 5, talking about how many you can get to as many Grizzlies as you want. And I will not care on this slate. But Jaren Jackson Jr., he is by far, he's expensive, but he's going to have the largest. He's just going to be able to shoot at will. What is it? 33.3% usage over the course of this season without John Morant, Dylan Brooks. That's 152 minutes, but that's still a number of. Jaren Jackson Jr. is already going to be popular. D'Anthony Melton and Desmond Bane become, for me, the two guys that you need to just jam into way, way more lineups than you were before on every single site. Like 5,700 is not cost prohibitive for D'Anthony Melton at this point. It is also, Kyle Anderson becomes, I think, probably the best tournament play of the entire slate, where if he ends up playing whatsoever, you're getting a guy that could legitimately put up 35 here in this spot. Could he end up in the starting unit here in this spot?
I assume the starting lineup is going to be I mean, he could.
I mean, they've shown, I mean, they've played Bain and Melton together in that starting game before. I have a feeling they're going to want to bring one of them off the bench. Maybe not, though. I mean, Kyle Anderson, he started 2 games randomly there like 3 weeks ago, 20 and 23 minutes there against Minnesota, Utah. He was there for a second. Who were either of them out? No, it doesn't look like it. So, I mean, it was just kind of random 2 starts there. He had to start randomly. That would have been during the preseason, so we disregard that. So 2 random Kyle Anderson starts that we saw in the middle of it. It does seem to me, though, like Bain is obviously going to be starting. D'Anthony Melton seems like they've wanted to bring him off the bench for the last couple weeks. And, you know, he was a guy that was starting earlier in the season there alongside John Morant when Dillon Brooks was out. Maybe with Dillon Brooks back in, maybe this is just simply a 1-for-1. You put Melton in there to start.
I'm going to agree with your original take and say Kyle Anderson starts, unless he has some kind of minutes restriction. Yeah. I think they probably go to Kyle Anderson just because they don't really love playing D'Anthony Melton extended minutes. We saw him get bigger minutes earlier in the year when there was a bunch of guys out for Memphis. But I think I'm going to lean right now towards projecting the minutes as if the starting lineup is Tyus Jones, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kyle Anderson, and Steven Adams.
All right. Again, get more lineups into the fray. I mean, I'm just firing way more here. I think you should too. There just aren't many opportunities like this in NBA DFS where I still feel like there's going to be rostership on Dillon Brooks here, and not enough people are going to. We got Devin Vassell available to play. That's good to know here as well. Less of a talking point on this slate. Going to be very low owned still, and probably rightfully so. I'm going to find it hard not to have 4 Memphis Grizzlies in just about every single lineup, including on FanDuel here. But people are asking about Jarrett Culver. Do you think he enters the rotation? I would say he'd be the last guy that I would want to be taking shots on. I'd be more inclined to try to make Santi Aldama a thing, Xavier Tillman a thing. John Conchar is back in there. Whereas that's definitely somebody, John Conchar, that could be in there. God, anybody else here on the ancillary side of Memphis Grizzlies that you're giving a bump up to right now?
Yeah, so John Conchar, I think, has to play some sort of extended minutes now. And that doesn't mean he goes out and plays 30, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 to 26, I think, is reasonable. And that now makes him now also everything we said earlier, just kind of a lot of it becomes irrelevant, which is really the fun of NBA DFS. Is
well, this is why we weren't listening to each other earlier, because now it's the most important to talk to each other and communicate through these next 11 minutes so we can give the people what they need.
Yeah, so Conchar just has to play minutes. I mean, look at who's available now for the Memphis Grizzlies. And let's just assume, for all intents and purposes, Kyle Anderson plays right now. If Kyle Anderson doesn't play, we'll deal with it later. We'll make swaps close when that game starts. But so if the starting lineup is going to be Jackson, Jones, Bain, Anderson, Adams, we know Melton's playing minutes off the bench. Who's up next? Xavier Tillman and John Conchar. Tillman, I think, is worth maybe a little bit of a look. Nothing really too significant. Conchar is the guy who's a little bit more off the board that I think makes the most sense. And I'm really curious to see if we have a quick updated run of ownership projections to see where some of these guys lie. So 5 minutes ago, but that was with Dillon Brooks. So in our last ownership update, Dillon Brooks was the most popular play on DK at 41.7% owned, and on FanDuel he's projected for 52.2% ownership. That is not going to be the case.
Unbelievable. This is just incredible. I'm having a lot of fun. Let's figure this out. All right. Let's rank these guys on DraftKings, because I think that's where a lot of people have been playing at here. We're going to talk some Yahoo as well. I'm going to finish the loop on that here in like 2 minutes, but let's just say Jaren Jackson Jr. He's number 1, I think, for both of us still. I think in terms of usage, we've established he's the guy. Rank your next 4 Memphis Grizzlies in terms of priority.
Okay, so I'm rerunning lineups, and I'll see in a second what my actual exposure is to these guys, and then I could just say what that is.
Love it.
I will say this for sure. Almost all of my most rostered players now are Memphis Grizzlies and Nikola Jokic, and that really fills out a lot of my lineups.
Yeah.
So trickle-down effect also is going to be, I have more space to pay up for guys. So there was certain pay-up options I wasn't really getting to now that I do more of. So we'll talk about that in a second. But right now, so Jaren Jackson Jr., number 1, D'Anthony Melton 2, Tyus Jones 3, Kyle Anderson 4, Desmond Bain 5, John Conchar 6.
Okay. think that sounds perfect over on FanDuel. I'm just hitting refresh on my stuff here too. All right. For me, it's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be, I mean, obviously the main talking point that changed drastically for me, Kyle Anderson, when we had discussed him already, but Tyus Jones is almost like unavoidable for me now on that site. 5,800. Still don't care, playing as much as I possibly can. D'Anthony Melton has vaulted up the board here next to each other, taking him off. Desmond Bane, 6,400 was a gigantic number that I was getting to just a little bit under. Now I'm going to be way over. So I would go 1, Jaren Jackson Jr., 2, Tyus Jones, 3, D'Anthony Melton, 4, Desmond Bane, 5, Kyle Anderson. So I think that it's pretty in sync. And I'm going to boost Kyle Anderson a little bit more, not in terms of his projection, but in terms of if he does give it a go here, I'll be able to find ways to get to other pieces there still and mix and match, because all of my rostership is going to be there. You have the Spurs game. I have no problem just boosting Kyle Anderson with the hopes that he's in. And then if he is in, you've got the best GPP play of the slate.
Yeah. And once again, really curious to see if we have an updated run of ownership, which probably be coming in soon, but very late, unexpected news here. And going to be, here we go. We've got an ownership update as of 1 minute ago. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. The most popular player on DK right now is D'Anthony Melton. The second most popular player on DK today is Tyus Jones. The third most popular player on DK today is Jaren Jackson Jr. The fourth most popular, this one's going to surprise you a little bit, Kyle Anderson. Very popular now.
Oh.
A lot of people get into Kyle Anderson. So the top 4 most rostered players right now on DK, all from the Memphis Grizzlies. Over on FanDuel, Jaren Jackson Jr. 1, Tyus Jones 2, Anthony Davis 3, Will Barton 4, DeJounte Murray 5. So the biggest trickle-down effect of this news, outside of obviously just getting to a lot of Memphis Grizzlies players, that's something that is in both of our lineups a pretty heavy amount now. I'm getting to more of DeJounte Murray than I was before. I almost had 0 of DeJounte Murray 6 minutes ago. Now he's in a whole bunch of my lineups because I had all this extra value to get to, and he's just the guy who ended up being the next man up.
That's why you don't go anywhere for these shows, everybody, because what we said 20 minutes ago doesn't matter. It literally does not apply. I'm getting to a crazy amount of Jokic. I'm getting to a crazy amount of Embiid at center. 20%, I guess. So I'm at the field there on FanDuel. I was always going to get to about half on Nikola Jokic. That was kind of a de facto thing for me. Anthony Davis, I can get to more of than I was anticipating now on FanDuel as well, where he's more of a talking point, I think, than the DK slate. He was just way too owned for me. I think it's pretty easy to get to some of him now. Happy to be going that direction as well. God, this slate is just incredible. Kyle Anderson, please play, because I don't think he could possibly be as owned as what we've got him in at. I would be very, very surprised if that were the case. But hey, you know what? We do have the best ownership projections here in the game. And God, this is just outrageous how much Desmond Bane I'm getting to. It's 6,400 over on FanDuel, and it just doesn't even matter anymore because he's the best. He's just phenomenal play. Rondo, I saw Rajon Rondo got ruled out. I don't care. He hasn't really been in the rotation. Do you have any reaction to that? It doesn't matter to me.
I had him for 0 minutes, and it's very rare that a player with name value gets ruled out and it doesn't change his minutes projection.
Yep, 0, like legitimately 0. My top 5 highest owned play. Well, DeJounte Murray and Jokic in the middle of it there, but Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, Kyle Anderson, D'Anthony Melton over on the FanDuel slate. I bet it looks pretty similar for you, Greg.
Yeah, so I have not rerun lineups for FanDuel yet, but doing that right now. It's going to be the same thing. A whole lot of Memphis Grizzlies. I'm actually probably going to have 4 Memphis Grizzlies in almost every single lineup I make over on FanDuel.
Yep, I do too. I literally do. You don't even have to put a rule in to say, hey, I want to get minimum 3 or 4 of those guys, because it's just going to happen. Like there's nothing you can do to avoid it if you're going off of our ownership project or off of, any competent projection system, but literally ours is the best already. And so firing it up, it is perfect. Yahoo, thank you so much to them. We filled up their $10 baller. So I'm excited about that. That's starting here in less than 5 minutes. The slate will be getting underway. Going to be a really, really fun one, but thank you so much again to Yahoo. Want to double back on them. and let them know that we really appreciate them. They also have the Thursday night baller contest. So check that out. 175K contest with 20K to first. It is phenomenal. Yahoo users, this is what we were talking about when that apocalyptic news dropped. But 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum with your deposit of $10 or more. All you do is enter any of those paid contests, something tonight, something tomorrow, something used, something borrowed, something old, whatever. Anytime you deposit $10 or more as a new user, you will get this free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. They'll send you a ticket. You send it to us. Done. End of story. You'll get that free month. No better way to check out the industry-leading projections that we have, the industry-leading ownership, the premium Discord, all of the tools, including the NBA Boom Bust tool, which we refer to normally all the time. This slate has just gone apocalyptic, so we're not going to be discussing it as much here, but check out all of those great tools developed by Alex Baker and all the guys behind the scenes themselves. So thank you so much to them. Definitely check out Yahoo. Let's go here. Greg, we got 4 minutes to go. I don't really think that there's any question about it that this slate is going to be very fantastic and exciting. Is there somebody that doesn't play for Memphis and isn't DeJounte Murray and Nikola Jokic that you're still getting to a bunch on this slate?
Jakob Poeltl is somebody who's in a good amount of my lineups at 6,400. He's actually my third most rostered center. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Nikola Jokic ahead of him. So still getting to a good clip of Jakob Poeltl. I mean, just points per dollar. I think he makes a lot of sense. I've been rostering him a bunch as of late. Other players, boy, do I have to scroll down. The answer is no.
So that's what I was getting at. Is I just wanted to know if there was somebody else that made sense outside of those guys, because I think the slate is very cut and dry now. Bunch of Memphis, Nikola Jokic, DeJounte Murray. Move on with your day. Maybe Derek White. I think he's somebody that I might boost here in the next 2 minutes. We've seen some massive upside from him as well, but Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, I feel like they're all capped playing together still. So I'm going to go to the other options.
Yeah, and so it's not like that's the entirety of my player pool. It's just directly addressing the question, who am I getting a lot of? There's a whole bunch of guys I have like 10 to 15% exposure to. Russell Westbrook ends up falling into that category. Now, Derek White being another one on DraftKings. I still don't want to play him on FanDuel at 7,900. Will Barton, we were just talking about, he was too expensive on DK. Guess what? I have him on DK now too. Also, another one. It's just a lot of guys that I did not have in my player pool. I just had extra salary to work with, and now they just pop up in 5, 10, 15% of lineups.
All righty. 2 minutes to go, everybody. Skull. Yes, indeed. Skull. We're going to be having some NFL Live before lock, so check that out. Once again, 7:15 p.m. Eastern time with Lofty, Alex, Ben. Looking forward to that here. Greg, just round out this slate for me here. I'm just going to put in one more update to my lineups. Looking forward to it here. But anything else that you want to discuss that's really drastically changed for you other than everything?
Everything is certainly one of the things that has changed. There's not too much doubt there. But looking at the ownership projections right now, I'm curious, who's the most popular value player on DK and FanDuel that isn't from Memphis? It is Lonnie Walker, still projected for 24% ownership. Royce O'Neal projected for 21. Let's see, over on FanDuel, who are the value pieces on FanDuel now? It is really just the Memphis guys.
Yeah, the Memphis guys. Aaron Gordon at 5,500. Aldama is somebody that popped up quite a bit there. 3,600 for Aldama. I got 20% of him over on that slate. So again, you have plenty of time to still adjust your lineups. You'll have another hour when we get done with this to be able to mix and match. You should have a couple roster spots, I think, in the afternoon window. So I don't want to sleep on Aldama. I think he's somebody that, we have projected for a low amount of minutes. It's more of just like, in the event Kyle Anderson doesn't go, you could be looking at getting to a ton of Santi and be in a great spot. But Will Barton, I wouldn't call him necessarily a value play, but 6K, super, super cheap and projecting out well still here. So that's going to do it, everybody. Wow. What a show. What a slate. Looking forward to seeing how this all turns out for all of us. Surely, what could possibly go wrong when we all jam in the same pieces of chalk? But Greg, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Let's go Memphis Grizzlies. I think that is something that we're all going to be hitching our wagons to. As for blowout risk, the Lakers suck. They're not blowing out anybody. So could it happen? Sure. But the Lakers just played the Kings last week, and the Kings, everybody was out for the Kings, and the Lakers still lost that game in overtime. Lakers suck. No blowout. Memphis Grizzlies still went outright.
Hunter Lowmaster said, faded the shit out of Memphis blowout incoming. You are not winning money tonight. I can promise you that. But hey, everybody, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button on the way out. Make sure in 14 minutes, you guys go check out that NFL Live Before Lock show. Thank you so much to Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass. We have Impact saying it's Santa Claus season. I would probably play more of him as a result. But either way, guys, best of luck. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.